Prologue. I was 6 years old the first time I understood that silence could be a weapon. Don't watch, Selene. My grandmother's hands covered my eyes, but she forgot about the gap between her fingers. Children always find the gaps. They always see what adults think they've hidden. The beta female was chained to the iron post at the center of Ashvale's judgment ring. Her name was Dara. I knew her. She used to slip me honeyed bread from the kitchens when no one was looking, her fingers gentle against mine, her eyes always carrying that careful, watchful sadness I didn't have words for yet. She had tried to contact wolves outside the pack, had tried to send word to the free territories. They always try, the older slaves whispered. They always think someone will answer. Alpha Cain circled her slowly, the way a wolf circles something it has already decided to kill but wants to savor. His pale eyes swept the gathered crowd. Every ranked wolf stood in their finest. Every slave stood in their rags, collars gleaming in the gray morning light. Let this be remembered, he announced, his voice smooth as poured oil. Loyalty is the only currency worth having in Ashvale. Everything else, he gestured toward Dara almost lazily, is worthless. My grandmother's hands shook. I felt it in the trembling of her fingers against my face, in the way her breath came shallow and fast, like a caged bird throwing itself against wire. Her wolf was screaming inside her chest. I could feel that too, because we were bound, grandmother and granddaughter, and her pain was my pain. She did nothing. None of them did. The fire took Dara in the way fire always takes things, indifferently, completely, without any awareness of what it was consuming. I watched through the gap in my grandmother's fingers. Why? I asked, pulling at her sleeve when it was over and the crowd began to drift away like nothing had happened at all. Why didn't anyone stop it? My grandmother was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a thread. Because they taught us that we are alone. And when you believe you are alone, you stop reaching for anything outside your own survival. Are we alone? She looked down at me, and her eyes were full of something I couldn't name. Something that looked less like grief and more like fury wearing grief as a disguise. No, she said, but they need us to believe we are. I didn't understand. I was 6. I filed it away in the small, careful place where children store things too large for them. 3 years later, my grandmother was taken to the judgment ring herself. She had been teaching the slave children to read. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She stood straight against that iron post, her silver hair catching the light, and she looked out at the crowd of silent, bowed heads with an expression I would spend the next decade trying to decode. When the flames caught, she turned her face toward me, found me somehow in the crowd, the way people who love you always find you, and she said something. I couldn't hear it over the fire, but I watched her lips. You are not what they made you. I was 9 years old. I didn't know what she meant. I only knew the taste of ash, and the way the smell of smoke never fully left the inside of my nose after that. Not for 10 years. Not through every beating and humiliation and careful shrinking of myself into something small enough to be ignored. Not until the night Alpha Cain decided I had become too much of a problem to keep alive. 10 years later, chained in the same iron cell they used for my grandmother, hours away from my own fire, I finally begin to understand what she was trying to tell me. They don't chain us because we're weak. They chain us because they know, somewhere beneath all the cruelty and calculation, exactly what we are. And I am finally ready to remember. Chapter 1. Silver burns differently when you've had time to make peace with dying. I've worn restraint chains before. Every slave in Ashvale has, the way you wear rain or winter, not because you chose it but because refusal was never offered as an option. Punishment chains for working too slowly, for looking up when a ranked wolf passed, for breathing in a way that suggested you believed your breath had value. Those chains left scars that healed, eventually. Omega healing is slow, unremarkable, but persistent. Like weeds finding cracks in stone. These chains are not punishment chains. I press my forehead against the cold wall and try not to think about my grandmother. Try not to map the similarities between this cell and whatever cell they kept her in. Try not to calculate how many hours remain before Alpha Cain decides he's waited long enough. 4 hours, maybe 5, if he's in a theatrical mood. He usually is. The cell door scrapes open. I don't turn. I've decided that much. I won't give them the dignity of watching me flinch. You really know how to make enemies, little Wren. That voice. My chest tightens in a way that has nothing to do with the silver burning my wrists. I turn. Roan leans in the doorway, arms folded across his chest, that familiar sideways smile arranged carefully on his face like he's decided in advance how this conversation will go. We grew up in the same slave quarter, the same cold winters, the same careful rationing of hope. He taught me how to pick the lock on the kitchen pantry using a bent hairpin. I taught him how to read using pages torn from discarded books we found in the refuse bins behind the ranked wolves' hall. He is the closest thing I have ever had to a brother. He is also wearing a guard's sash now, deep burgundy across his chest, the mark of Cain's inner patrol. They are saying, he says, his voice carefully conversational, that you made fire come out of your hands. That you burned Councillor Draven's son from the inside out and left nothing but ash where 3 ranked wolves used to be. He says it the way you describe weather. Like it's a neutral fact. I don't answer. My throat is too dry, and what would I say? I don't understand what happened. One moment Soren had his hands around my throat, his weight crushing the air out of me, his entitled certainty that I had no right to resist pressing down harder than his hands. And then there was light, and screaming, and the smell of burning, and I couldn't stop it, couldn't aim it, couldn't call it back. Is it true? Roan steps closer. Something in his voice makes the wolf inside me go still with a sick, knowing dread. I don't know how I did it, I say. The words crack on the way out. He was going to. I just needed him to stop. Roan's jaw works. For one fragile, desperate moment I see it. The boy who used to share his single blanket with me in winter. The boy who cried when they took his mother to the judgment ring and didn't try to hide it because we were small and alone and crying was the only honest thing left. Then I see what he's holding. A vial. Dark glass. Even from here I can smell what's inside. Wolfsbane extract. Concentrated enough to sever a wolf's connection to her own instincts. To make her compliant. Small. Something that burns without fighting back. Roan. I'm sorry, Selene. His voice is wrecked, and I hate that it sounds genuine. They are offering freedom papers to whoever keeps you sedated until morning. A rank. A real one. Not just permission to exist. You don't have to. I have a younger brother. His eyes won't meet mine. He's 7. If I don't take this, we both die as slaves. You understand that. You would do the same. Would I? I stare at him, and the horrible thing is that I genuinely don't know. That's what Cain's system has done to us, made the question of whether we'd sell each other unanswerable. Because survival and betrayal have been braided together so tightly we can't find the seam. We could both run, I whisper. We could take your brother Anne. There's no out, Roan says, and his hand is shaking as he uncorks the vial. There's only through. You know that better than anyone. The wolfsbane goes in like liquid fire. My wolf shrieks and retreats, curling into the smallest possible version of herself somewhere deep behind my sternum, and then the connection to her is simply gone. Severed. Like a rope snapping in the dark. I'm hollowed out. Almost human. Almost nothing. For what it's worth, Roan says, his voice blurring at the edges as my legs stop holding me. I hope it's quick. You always deserved better than this place. He leaves me on the cold floor. I can hear them gathering outside. The sound of a pack preparing for spectacle. Voices bright with anticipation. The particular festive ugliness of people who've been denied so many pleasures that watching suffering has become entertainment. Cain keeps his people hungry and bored deliberately. A slave's execution is a holiday. I close my eyes and reach for my wolf, but she's unreachable, drowned, and without her I'm just a broken girl in chains. Just ash waiting to happen. You are not what they made you. I'm so tired, grandmother. So tired of surviving just to suffer through another day. Maybe. Footsteps. Different from the guards. Lighter than they should be for something that moves with that much certainty. And then, the scent. Cedar and rain and something underneath both of those things. Something electric and wild that I have no name for. Something that makes every hair on my arm stand at attention and my wolf stir weakly in her wolfsbane fog, whimpering a warning that sounds almost like pay attention. Not Ashvale pack. Not any pack I know. Rogue. The cell door doesn't open. It shatters. Stone and iron shriek together, a sound like the building itself screaming, and through the settling dust a figure steps into my cell as though he does this every day, as though cell doors are suggestions he has chosen to decline. Tall. Built like something carved for war rather than grown. Moving with that particular economy of motion that means the body has long since stopped performing readiness and simply is ready, at all times, for anything. His eyes find me immediately. They are an unusual color, deep amber, almost copper, lit from within like embers that haven't decided whether to go out or catch. He is covered in scars. Not the clean lines of battle scars. the deliberate, patterned marks of someone who was worked on carefully, methodically, by someone with time and intention. Burn marks on his forearms in shapes too regular to be accidental. Claw marks across his jaw. A brand at the side of his throat, partially obscured by newer scarring, as though someone tried to erase it and the skin grew back different. He looks at me like I'm the answer to a question that has been eating him alive for years. Selene Vayne, he says, and his voice is low and rough and carries the particular texture of someone who has spent a long time in places where speaking too loudly meant dying. Granddaughter of the Ashbourne line. Last living heir of the Ember throne. My lips move. Nothing comes out. The wolfsbane has my body locked down to basic function. He crouches in front of me. Up close I can see the amber in his eyes more clearly, warm at the edges, darker at the center, unsettling in their directness. He doesn't look away. Doesn't seem uncomfortable with the reality of me, crumpled and chain-burned and half-conscious on a stone floor. You can die here, he says quietly. Burn for Cain's entertainment. Be forgotten like all the others before you. His hand extends toward me. Scarred. Steady. Or you can come with me and learn what you've always been. Outside, the first pale gray of dawn breaks at the edge of the sky. Golden light angles through the ruined cell door. Somewhere in the packed square, the execution bell begins its slow, ceremonial toll. Running footsteps in the corridor. Many of them. Getting closer. Choose quickly, the stranger says. We're already late. I can't speak. Can't move anything but my eyes. I look at his hand. Then at his face. At the scars and the copper eyes and the particular quality of stillness in him that has nothing to do with calm and everything to do with the readiness of something that has survived long enough to stop being afraid of survival's cost. I blink once. Yes. Something moves across his expression. Relief, I think, though it's there and gone so fast I might have imagined it, replaced by a warrior's closed mask. This is going to hurt, he says. Then he gathers me up like I weigh less than my own fear, and he runs. The guards appear at the cell block entrance as we reach it. 8 of them, silver-tipped weapons drawn, faces twisted with the particular self-righteous fury of people who've confused cruelty with authority. The stranger, Ember, my wolf, whispers from somewhere beneath the wolfsbane, pushing his name up through the fog like a bubble rising through dark water. His name is Ember, doesn't slow down. He hits the guards the way weather hits, not personally, not angrily, just completely. I see it in fragments against his shoulder. Motion, impact, the sound of things breaking that I can't bring myself to catalogue. It takes him less than 12 seconds to clear the corridor. Then we're moving through the parts of Ashvale I know like the lines of my own hands, past the rendering kitchens where I've scrubbed stone floors until the skin of my palms was more scar than skin, past the sleeping quarters where 40 omegas huddle together for warmth in winter, past the great hall where Cain holds his court and decides, daily, who gets to matter and who doesn't. We burst into the dawn. The pack is gathered in the Judgment Square. Hundreds of them, dressed in their finest, arranged around the iron post like spectators at a festival. The wood is stacked high. The torch is already lit in Cain's hand. He sees us. His face does something complicated and then simplifies into rage. Stop them. The square erupts. Ember shifts mid-stride. I feel the change before I see it, the sudden expansion of the body beneath me, bones rearranging themselves with that grotesque efficiency that ranked wolves make look easy and that I, with my 3 shameful shifts in 10 years, have never managed to make look like anything but agony. And then I'm cradled in the jaws of the largest wolf I have ever seen. His coat is the dark red of banked coals. His eyes, even in wolf form, are that same copper amber. Power rolls off him in waves I can feel even through the wolfsbane numbness, waves that make my teeth ache and my wolf press herself against the bars of her enforced cage and whine. He is an alpha, a real one, and he runs like iron itself couldn't hold him. The pack wolves pursue, dozens of them. Ember is faster. He tears through the tree line at the edge of Ashvale's territory like a red comet, and behind us, Cain's howl of fury splits the pale dawn sky into pieces. The last thing I see before the wolfsbane drags me fully under is the forest canopy closing overhead, and Ember's copper eyes glancing back, checking, making sure I'm still breathing. Making sure he hasn't come this far only to lose me to Ashvale's poison. Then the darkness rises up to meet me, and I fall into dreams of ash and iron and a voice that sounds like my grandmother's, saying, "There she is. There's the girl I've been waiting for." Chapter 2. I wake to pain. This is not unusual. Pain has been my most reliable companion for as long as I can remember, more consistent than food, more dependable than safety, more honest than almost any person I've known. I understand pain. I know how to take inventory of it, categorize it, file it away into the part of myself that absorbs damage without comment. But this pain comes wrapped in something unfamiliar. Softness beneath me. Real softness, not the compressed straw of a slave palate, but something that yields genuinely to the weight of a body, as though it was designed with the comfort of that body in mind. Warmth from a fire crackling somewhere close. The smell of cedar and rain, his scent, threading through everything like a signature, and underneath that, something cooking. Actual food, not the grey broth they ladled out in the slave quarters twice a day, but something with herbs in it, something that smells like someone made it with attention. I open my eyes carefully. The space is a shallow cave tucked into a hillside, the entrance half-screened by a fall of dead ivy. Afternoon light comes in sideways, golden and unhurried. A fire burns near the entrance, small and efficiently made. Someone who knows how to make fires that give heat without giving away position. And standing at the cave mouth, silhouetted against all that golden light, is Ember. His inhuman form now. Dark trousers, a shirt that has been mended in 3 places with slightly mismatched thread. The shirt of someone who keeps things until they fall apart and then keeps them longer. His back is to me, but I can read his body the way you learn to read the bodies of people who have authority over you. The set of his shoulders, the angle of his head, the quality of his stillness. His scanning the forest below. Every few seconds, a small adjustment, eyes tracking something, cataloguing it, dismissing it or filing it for later. He has been doing this, I realize, for however long I was unconscious. Standing watch. Not sleeping. I try to sit up. My body lodges a formal complaint. The sound that escapes me before I can stop it is small and involuntary, barely a sound at all, more of a caught breath. But he turns instantly, crossing the cave in 4 long strides, crouching beside me before I've finished processing that he's moved at all. Don't. His voice is low, careful. The wolfsbane is still working through your system. Your wolf can't help you metabolize it as fast as she normally would. How long? Since the escape. Most of a day. He reaches behind him for a water skin, and there's something in the way he handles it, the way he handles most things, I'll come to notice, with a kind of deliberate gentleness, like he's made a conscious decision to be careful and renews that decision with every action. You need to drink. Slowly. The water is cold and clean in a way that water in Ashvale never is. I drink too fast anyway. He pulls it back before I can make myself sick, and I hate how grateful I am for the management of it, for someone making that decision because they are paying attention to what I need. Who are you? I ask, when I trust my voice to carry more than a whisper. Really? Ember. He caps the water skin and sets it within my reach. Ember Voss. That's a name, not an answer. Something moves at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but adjacent to one, like a smile seen through frosted glass. You're right, he says. It isn't. He's quiet for a moment, studying me with those copper eyes in a way that should feel invasive and somehow doesn't. It feels more like being read, like being taken seriously. Why did you save me? I ask. Because I made a promise to someone a long time ago. A pause. And because you're the last chance we have. Last chance for what? To end Cain. He says it the way you'd say something you've been carrying for years, not dramatically, but with the exhausted certainty of a truth that's been with you so long it's worn grooves in you. To free the packs he controls. To give back what he took. He studies my face. You really don't know, do you? What you are. I'm an Omega slave, I say. That's what I am. That's what they made you perform. His voice doesn't rise, doesn't sharpen. It's not what you are. I want to argue. I want to defend the logic of my own smallness because smallness has kept me alive and anything larger than small has always gotten the people I love killed. But the wolfsbane is still in my blood, and I'm too tired for the armor of it. My grandmother, I say. She told me to hide. To survive. She never told me. She was protecting you. He sits back slightly, giving me space without withdrawing attention. The Ashbourne line was destroyed 18 years ago. Not gradually, in a single night. Cain moved through the old celestial territories like fire through dry grass. Every elder, every warrior, every child. My heart is doing something irregular against my ribs. He had them hunted. Wanted the bloodline extinguished completely. Ember's jaw tightens. Your grandmother got you out. Hid you in Ashvale's own slave quarters. Hidden in the one place Cain would never think to look. Among the people he'd already decided didn't matter. I don't understand. My voice has gone strange and thin. You are the last living heir of the Ember throne. He holds my gaze with that unnerving steadiness. Granddaughter of Myra Ashbourne, who was the most powerful celestial alpha this territory has seen in 3 generations. The power that killed Sorn and those guards, that was yours, Selene. Not an accident. Not a malfunction. You. The light. The explosion of it when Sorn's hands were at my throat, when I was certain I was going to die and my body decided, apparently, that it had opinions about that. I killed them, I whisper. You defended yourself. Something flickers in his expression, brief, almost fierce. And you showed Cain exactly what he thought he'd eliminated 18 years ago. He knows now. He'll be coming. Then why are we sitting here? Because you can barely sit up. He glances toward the cave entrance. And the wolfsbane needs another few hours before your wolf can function properly. Running now means they catch us, and I can't fight off Cain's full patrol while carrying you. I look at him, at the scars, the mended shirt, the copper eyes that keep returning to me with that quality of sustained attention I have no framework for. And I ask the question that is actually several questions compressed into one. What do? We wait until you can shift. He stands, moving back to the entrance to keep watch. Then we run until we reach the thorn waste. I know the thorn waste by reputation the way you know storms by the damage they leave, stories, warnings, the kind of fear that people perform to keep you from asking more questions. Exiled wolves. Rogues. Territory where pack law doesn't reach and only the ruthless or the desperate survive. We'll die there, I say. We'll die here if Cain finds us while you're still half-poisoned. A beat. The thorn waste is the only territory his pack won't follow us into. And I have people there. The way he says people, with that complicated flatness, tells me the word is both accurate and insufficient. I force myself upright despite my body's protest, needing to take inventory of my situation. The cave is small but intentional. This is not a random shelter. Someone has used this place before. There are marks on the stone near the entrance, subtle, deliberate. Symbols I don't recognize. Beyond the cave mouth, forest stretches in every direction. Real forest, dense and green and enormous. Nothing like the managed tree lines at Ashvale's edges where slaves were sent to gather wood. This is wilderness that doesn't know it's supposed to make way for people. I have never seen anything this alive. How far did we come? I ask. 15 miles, maybe a little more. He doesn't turn. Not far enough yet. My wolf, I say, reaching inward carefully. She's there. Diminished, sluggish, moving through the wolfsbane fog like something wading through deep water, but present. Awake. I can feel her. Good. A small shift in the line of his shoulders, something that might be relief. When I tell you to shift, don't deliberate. Don't talk yourself through it. Just let her come. He pauses. How many times have you shifted? The question stings the way questions do when they are perfectly accurate about something you're ashamed of. Enough, I say. He turns to look at me, reads my face. Something shifts in his expression, understanding, not judgment, which is somehow worse. How many times, Selene? 4, I say, because lying about it will only make the training harder, and I know, somehow, that training is coming whether I'm ready for it or not. 4 times in 10 years. Shifting is a death sentence in Ashvale, I continue, before he can respond. They execute wolves for it. I only shifted when I had no other choice. Ember is quiet for a moment that stretches just long enough to be uncomfortable. 4 times, he says finally, and I can hear him recalibrating something, adjusting whatever plan exists in that careful, constantly working mind. Your wolf is strong, Selene. I could feel her power even through the wolfsbane when I came into that cell. But she's essentially feral from disuse. She doesn't know how to work with you. I know, I say, and the shame of it burns differently from the silver burns on my wrists. I know I'm behind. I know You are not behind. His voice is flat with a certainty that leaves no room for argument. You are precisely where someone would be after 10 years of being legally forbidden from existing as what they actually are. Those are not the same thing. I look at him. You survived 10 years of Cain's system, he continues, crossing back toward me, crouching so we're at eye level again. You survived losing your grandmother and whatever else they did to you in that place. And you're still here, still thinking, still asking the right questions. Survival that's sustained and that deliberate is not weakness. Something unfamiliar and uncomfortable swells in my chest. I recognize it distantly, the way you recognize a song you haven't heard since childhood. Good and painful in equal measure. No one has ever called me strong. Not once in 10 years. The power that killed those guards, Ember continues, his voice steadying into something practical, protective. That's only the beginning of what your line can do. Once we're somewhere safe, once I can train you properly, you'll begin to understand what you were actually born for. And what was I born for? His eyes hold mine. To end what Cain built. To give back what he stole. A pause that carries weight. To rule. Before I can respond to that, before I can even begin to locate a response to that, Ember's head turns sharply toward the forest below. His whole body changes register in an instant, from watchful to alert to something past alert. They are here, he says, very quietly. How close is your wolf? I reach inward. She surges toward me, weak, slow, but present. Willing. Close enough, I say. Then shift. He's already moving toward the cave entrance, predator smooth. When I say run, you run north until you find the river. Follow it west. You'll know the thorn waste when you reach it. The trees go dark and the air changes. Don't stop. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. What about you? He shifts. It's the fastest shift I've ever seen. Not the agonized, joints-grinding transformation I know from my own 4 desperate attempts. Not even the practiced ease of Ashvale's ranked warriors showing off at pack gatherings. This is something else entirely. A change so fluid it looks less like bones breaking and more like a form remembering what it actually is. The dark red wolf that stands before me is enormous. Larger than any wolf I've seen, including Cain's prized warriors. His coat is that deep ember red, shot through with darker threads, and his eyes in wolf form are still that copper amber that I am already, I realize with some alarm, beginning to think of as familiar. I'll hold them off, his voice says, and it shouldn't be possible for me to hear him, because I'm not his pack, I have no bond with him, there's no channel between us through which Alpha commands should be able to travel. But I hear it. Clear as spoken words. Clear as a bell in still air. Go. He is going to die holding them off so I can run. No, I say. Outside, the sounds of the approaching patrol reach us through the tree line. The particular Bella-controlled chaos of wolves who've been given permission to be brutal and are eager to use it. Ember growls, a sound that moves through my chest like a hand pressing against a bruise. Shift and run, now, and my wolf doesn't wait for me to decide. She comes. The change is painful. It's always painful, for me, because I've never done it enough to build the ease into my body, never let my cells forget what it costs to rearrange themselves. But underneath the pain is something else this time, urgency, rightness, the feeling of a door that has been held shut for 10 years finally blowing open in a storm. I land on 4 paws in the cave, smaller than Ember, my coat a dark auburn that I've only glimpsed twice before in my own reflection, and I am fast. Faster than I remembered. Faster, maybe, than I knew. Run, Ember commands again. But through the trees I can already see them. 8 wolves, all ranked warriors. All wearing Cain's colors in the particular way wolves carry their alpha's claim even in shifted form. And at their head, a gray wolf the size of a small horse, with pale, cold eyes that find me across the distance like 2 chips of winter sky. Cain. He came himself. He looks at me the way you look at something you own that has misbehaved. And his smile, a wolf's smile, all teeth, no warmth, says that whatever I've done has not frightened him, has only sharpened his intention. Did you really think? His voice slides into my mind with the greasy ease of an alpha who's been forcing pack bonds for years. That a slave could run from me? She was never yours to keep. Ember places himself between us, every line of that massive ember-red body coiled and ready. Everything in Ashvale is mine, Cain says. His pale eyes find me again over Ember's shoulder. Come back now, little wren. We can make this quick. Oh, Ember attacks. He hits Cain like a force of weather, like something that was always going to hit and was simply waiting for the right moment to arrive. They collide in a tangle of red and gray, rolling across the dead leaves, and the sound of it is enormous and awful, and I am standing completely still watching it when something inside me simply breaks. Not fear, not despair, rage. Pure, white, incandescent fury. 10 years of it. The accumulated weight of every beating and every humiliation, and every morning I woke up and had to choose, again, to keep surviving rather than give in to the knowledge of what my life was. All of it coming up through my pores from the ground and out through my skin in a wave of silver-gold light that I don't cause so much as become the vessel for. It pours out of me in every direction. Where it touches Cain's warriors, they scatter, not killed, not destroyed, but burned. the celestial light finding the places in them that have been twisted by Cain's cruelty and making those places briefly, agonizingly visible. They retreat from it. They can't help retreating from it. Cain breaks from Ember, spinning to face me. His pale eyes are wide. I have never, in 10 years, seen anything in those eyes except cold calculation. What I see now is fear. What are you? He breathes. I don't know. I don't understand it. Can't control it. Can feel it pouring out of me like water from a cracked vessel, and I cannot find the edges of it to hold on to. Selene. Ember's voice cuts through the light. To me. Now. I run to him on instinct, and the moment I'm close enough he takes the scruff of my neck in his jaws, so carefully, with such deliberate gentleness despite everything happening around us, and swings me onto his back. Then he runs. Behind us, Cain's howl of pure fury shakes the leaves from the trees. But they don't follow immediately. They hesitate. Whatever I just did has brought us something neither of us expected. They're afraid of me. For the first time in 10 years, something in Ashvale is afraid of me. I cling to Ember's back as he runs, and I feel something shift in my chest, something old and locked and long since given up on, cracking open like a seed. Cain built his empire on the certainty that wolves like me stay broken. He forgot one thing. Broken things, given enough time, sometimes remember what they were before the breaking. And I am beginning, finally, to remember. Chapter 3. Ember runs for nearly 3 hours without slowing. I learn the rhythm of him, the way his breathing shifts when he's pushing harder, the small adjustments in his stride when the terrain changes beneath his paws, the way he angles his body on slopes to keep me stable without breaking pace. He runs like someone who has spent years learning what his body can endure and then pushing past it until endurance became the baseline. I cling to his back and watch the forest change around us. The living trees thin first, green giving way to gray to pale, pale to the kind of colorless that isn't absence of color so much as color that has given up. The undergrowth drops away. The bird sounds stop so gradually I don't notice their absence until the silence is total. Not the comfortable silence of deep forest, but the particular held breath silence of a place where things have learned not to make noise. Then the trees go dark. Not shadow dark. Change dark. The bark blackened and twisted, not from fire but from something slower and more fundamental, as though the wood itself made a decision long ago about what it wanted to become. The branches reach at angles that don't quite track with where the light comes from. The air shifts, the clean cold of the forest replaced by something with more weight to it, something that carries the taste of old ash and ozone and something else underneath both of those, something ancient and watchful that makes my wolf press close to my sternum and breathe carefully. This is the thorn waste. Ember slows to a walk the moment we cross whatever invisible line marks the border. Behind us, the sounds of pursuit simply stop, not gradually. All at once, like a switch thrown. The absence of it is loud. He carries me another mile before he finally stops entirely, his sides heaving, his breathing labored in a way that tells me how much those 3 hours cost him. I slide from his back on unsteady legs, and he shifts beside me. I look away on reflex, because modesty is the habit of someone who was punished for looking at ranked wolves without permission, and habits that kept you alive for 10 years don't dissolve in a morning. There's a shelter half a mile ahead, he says, his voice rougher from the run. We'll rest there. Whose shelter? Mine. He starts walking without waiting for me to follow, and I follow because there is nothing else to do and because, I realize with some discomfort, I am already beginning to trust the set of his shoulders the way you trust landmarks. He moves through the thorn waste without hesitation, which means he knows it, which means he has spent real time here, not passing through but living here, in this lightless, watchful place. Cain's wolves won't follow us here, I say. No. Why not? A pause that contains something complicated. The thorn waste has its own dangers, he says. Things that don't distinguish between Cain's wolves and anyone else. His pack knows better than to cross the border without significant numbers and preparation. He glances back at me. We'll be safe. As long as we stay alert. What kind of things? The kind that happen when wolves stay in corrupted territory long enough to lose the boundary between themselves and the corruption. His voice is flat and informational, the voice of someone describing something they've encountered and survived and have no desire to be dramatic about. Shadow taken. They were wolves once. They aren't, really, anymore. The thorn waste is silent around us. The dead trees cast no shadows in any direction that makes sense. You've lived here, I say. For a long time, yes. By choice. The pause this time is longer. Not initially. We walk in silence for a while, and I let myself catalogue what the wolfsbane has left behind. A deep muscular exhaustion, a sensitivity in my joints, the particular hollowness of a wolf separated from her instincts for too long. My power is somewhere beneath all of that. I can feel it distantly, like an ember under wet ash. Present. Waiting. You said you made a promise, I say. To someone. That's why you came for me. He doesn't answer immediately. The silence stretches long enough that I assume he's decided not to, and I'm preparing to let it go when he speaks. Your grandmother. I stop walking. He takes 2 more steps before he registers that I've stopped, and turns. You knew her, I say. I knew of her first. Then I knew her. He turns back to walking, and I fall into step beside him this time rather than behind, close enough to see his face when he speaks. 18 years ago, when Cain moved against the Ashbourne line, I was a boy, 13 years old. My father was one of Cain's senior commanders, one of the wolves who planned the attack. The cold that moves through me has nothing to do with the Thornwaste air. Your father, I say carefully, killed a great many people that night. He believed what Cain told him, that the Ashbourne line had become dangerous, that the celestial bloodline was a threat to pack stability, that elimination was necessary and just. His voice carries the particular quality of something that has been examined so many times it has worn smooth. He was not a stupid wolf. He was a convinced one. There's a difference, and it matters less than you'd think. But you. I was 13 and I believed what my father believed because I had been given nothing else to believe. He stops, and when he looks at me the copper in his eyes has gone darker, more internal. Until I saw your grandmother. We have reached the shelter, a structure that was once a cabin and has been rebuilt and repaired so many times it has become a collaboration between its original form and everything that has tried to reclaim it. It stands, solidly, which is its own kind of argument. Ember pushes the door open and gestures me inside. The interior is spare and purposeful, a sleeping platform, a fire pit, a table with maps weighted at their corners. Weapons on every wall, arranged with the casual familiarity of someone who knows which one they'll reach for first in any given situation. A shelf of provisions. Books, several of them, their spines cracked with use. He crosses to a chest in the corner, pulling out clothing, tossing me a shirt and trousers in dark fabric. Too large, but real and clean and whole. We dress in the silence of people who have run out of the kind of energy that requires pretending to be comfortable, and it isn't awkward, exactly. It is the absence of performance, which is its own strange intimacy. Tell me, I say, about my grandmother. He sits on the edge of the table, studying the middle distance. Cain's forces had her cornered in one of the outer lodges. She was protecting something. Someone. His eyes find mine briefly. You. I understand now, though I didn't know it then. My father had her contained. I was there because boys of 13 followed their fathers to war in Cain's pack, because he believed that was how you made soldiers. He pauses. My father raised his hand. And your grandmother looked at me. The fire I've started in the pit catches and settles, throwing warm, unsteady light across his face. She looked at me, he says again, quieter. This 13-year-old boy holding a torch he'd been given because someone thought it would be educational. And she didn't curse me. Didn't look at me with the hatred she had every right to feel. She looked at me the way. He stops. Starts again. The way people look at someone they've decided to believe in before that person has given them any reason to. Tears are building somewhere behind my eyes. I don't let them fall yet. She said something, I say. She said, you'll understand, one day, what you're standing in the middle of. When you do, find her. She'll need someone who knows what it cost. His jaw is tight. Then she told me your name. Then my father. He stops again. Then he simply continues. I didn't understand. Not for years. Not until my father turned on me as well. He sets his hands flat on the table, and I look at the scars across them, the deliberate ones, the patterns too regular to be accidental, and understand without being told that his father's turning was not a quiet thing, not a matter of words and severance, but of the kind of prolonged persuasion that leaves its record in skin. He exiled me for questioning an order, Ember says. Branded me a traitor. A gesture toward the partially obscured mark at his throat, the one I noticed in the cell, and spent considerable effort making sure I'd remember his reasoning. I'm sorry. Don't be. He looks up, and what's in his eyes now is complicated but not broken. The expression of someone who has found a use for their damage. He made me what I needed to become. A wolf who understood Cain's system from the inside. A wolf with nothing to lose and enough anger to last for years. The ghost of that almost smile. And eventually, a wolf with enough sense to turn the anger into something useful. A revolution, I say. A beginning. He stands, moving to the fire. There are others in the thorn waste, Selene. Wolves who've escaped Ash Vale. Wolves who were exiled from Cain's other territories. Wolves who've been waiting years for something to gather around. A center of gravity. He looks at me across the fire. You're the center of gravity. The weight of it lands on me the way large things land. Not all at once but in stages, each stage heavier than the last. I don't know how to be that, I say honestly. No one does, before they are. He picks up a piece of firewood, turns it in his hands. What happens now is this. I teach you to fight. I teach you to control your power. I teach you everything your grandmother didn't have time to teach you herself. A pause. And then we take Ashvale back. Just like that. Nothing about it will be just like that. His voice is dry. It will be difficult and dangerous, and there will be moments when it seems impossible. But it will happen. He sets the firewood in the fire. Because the alternative is Cain continuing, and that is no longer something I'm willing to allow. I sit with this for a moment, in the warmth of a fire I didn't have to earn by suffering, in borrowed clothes that no one is going to take away from me, in a structure in the middle of the most dangerous territory in the region, safer than I have felt in 10 years. My grandmother gave you something, I say. It isn't really a question. I can feel it the way you feel things that have been true for a long time without your knowledge, a rightness in the shape of an absence. Ember reaches into the chest again, slowly, like the object inside requires a particular kind of care in the handling. He brings out a journal. Small, dark leather cover, cracked at the spine, the pages swollen slightly with age. When he holds it out to me, I can smell it even across the distance, old paper, ink, and beneath both of those, something faint and warm that my wolf knows before my mind does. She made me promise to keep it until you were ready, Ember says. She said you'd know when you were. My hands are not entirely steady when I take it. The cover bears a mark pressed into the leather, a crescent moon inside a ring of small flame shapes, the symbol of the Ashbourne line that I have seen in exactly one place before, scratched into the stone wall of my grandmother's cell the day after she died, left by someone who wanted it recorded. I open the first page. My grandmother's handwriting. Small and precise and absolutely her, even after 10 years of absence. For Selene, when she stops hiding. The tears fall now. I don't stop them. Ember says nothing, which is exactly right, which is the thing I needed him to do. I cry for my grandmother, for the 10 years, for the burning, for everything I filed away under survive and never let myself feel. He stays on the other side of the fire and keeps watch and doesn't try to manage my grief into something more convenient. And this quality of witness without interference, is something I have no framework for and no word for and no experience of, and I feel it rearranging something inside me at a level too deep to articulate. When I'm done, I press the journal against my chest and breathe. When do we start? I ask. Tomorrow at dawn. His voice is even, careful. Tonight, you read. Tonight, you let yourself know her again. I look at him across the fire. Why does it matter to you? I ask. Really? Not the promise. Not the revolution. Why do you care what happens to me? He is quiet for a long time. The thorn waste is silent around the cabin. No wind. No creatures. Just the fire and the dark trees and the particular quality of this man's silence, which I am beginning to learn has texture to it. This one thoughtful, careful, turned inward. When my father exiled me, he says finally, he told me I would die here. Alone. That nothing I'd ever done would matter and nothing I ever did would change that. A pause. I've spent 7 years in this place proving him wrong. Gathering people, building something, waiting. His copper eyes find mine across the fire. But waiting for what? I couldn't have told you. Not exactly. Not until I heard the rumors of a slave in Ashvale who'd burned 3 of Cain's ranked wolves and survived long enough to be sentenced. Something moves through his expression, brief and unguarded. And I thought, there she is. That's what all of it was for. He looks away. That's why I care, he says. Because you're the first thing in 7 years that's made the survival feel like it was leading somewhere. I hold my grandmother's journal and watch Ember watch the fire, and outside the thorn waste holds its enormous corrupted silence around us, and I think about seeds cracking open in the dark where no one can see them, before any of the above-ground evidence exists, when it's only the seed itself that knows something has changed. Get some sleep, Ember says. Dawn comes whether we're ready for it or not. I lie back on the sleeping platform and open my grandmother's journal, and her voice rises from the pages to meet me, and I read until the fire burns low. Outside, Ember's shadow crosses the window at regular intervals, keeping watch. And for the first time in 10 years, I sleep without listening for the sound of the cell door. Chapter 4. Dawn does not ease into the thorn waste. It arrives the way everything arrives here, abruptly, without negotiation, the darkness simply replaced by a grey light that illuminates without warming, that shows you where you are without making you feel any better about it. I know this because Ember is pounding on the cabin door before the grey has fully established itself. Up. Now. I have been awake for 20 minutes already, lying on the sleeping platform with my grandmother's journal open on my chest, reading by the last of the firelight and then by the first of the grey dawn. And I still resent the knock in a way that surprises me. The particular resentment of someone who was woken before dawn every day of their life by people who owned them and who thought, apparently, that being free meant being done with that. Freedom, it turns out, also contains people banging on your door at first light. They just have different reasons. I pull on my borrowed clothes and step outside. Ember is in the clearing behind the cabin, shirtless despite a temperature that has me pulling the too large shirt tighter. His torso in the morning light is a document of everything his life has been. The deliberate scars, the burn marks, the evidence of years of damage accumulated and survived. He has been training already. I can see it in the sweat on his skin and the particular looseness in his movements, the way a body settles after exertion into something more available to itself. He doesn't look at me when I appear. You're late, he says. You didn't tell me a time. Dawn means dawn. Now he looks at me, and his expression is the one I will come to think of as his instructor's face, not unkind, but stripped of the careful warmth he allows himself in the evenings, reduced to something functional and demanding. Cain's wolves train before light. His trackers don't pause for sleeping in. If you want to survive what's coming, you need to be harder than the people who are coming for you. Irritation flares through my exhaustion, clean and almost welcome. I survived 10 years of Cain's system, I say. I think I understand something about hard. You understand endurance. He moves toward me, not slowly. That's not the same thing. He attacks before I finish processing that he's going to. Not full strength. I understand this later, when I have a reference point for what his full strength looks like. But fast enough that I have perhaps half a second of warning before his hand is where my face was, the displaced air of it cooling my cheek as I stumble backward. Fight back, he says. I don't know how. Then learn quickly. He comes again. I try to block. I've seen enough of Ashvale's guards sparring in the yard to have some dim idea of what blocking looks like. And he sweeps my arm aside with the ease of someone removing an obstacle from a path, tapping my collarbone with 2 fingers. Dead, he says flatly. This isn't fair. His voice doesn't mock, exactly, but it doesn't soften either. Cain doesn't hold back because you're untrained. Sorn didn't pause because you'd never learned to defend yourself. A beat, deliberate and pointed. The only person who has ever held back around you, Selene, is you. The anger that moves through me at that is complicated. Part fury at him, part recognition, part the particular sharp feeling of something true landing where you didn't want it to land. He attacks again, and again, and again. By the 10th attempt I am furious and exhausted and the back of my left knee is going to be purple by tomorrow and I am absolutely not going to cry about it. Not in front of him, not in this clearing, not after everything. Stop, I gasp. Just, give me a moment. Victor didn't stop when. I know. The words come out harder than I intend. I know he won't stop. I know none of them will stop. I've been living inside that knowledge for 10 years. So please don't explain it to me like I'm someone who needs the lesson. Silence. Ember stands very still. Something moves through his expression. Reassessment, I think, the recalibration of someone realizing they've been teaching the wrong thing. You're right, he says. I look at him. I'm teaching you like you don't know what danger is, he says, and his voice has changed, the instructor's flatness replaced by something more direct, more genuine. You know what danger is better than almost anyone I've trained. That's not what I need to teach you. He extends his hand. I take it. He pulls me up with a steadiness that has nothing performative in it. What I need to teach you, he continues, is that your body has responses you've never been allowed to access. Your wolf has instincts that have been locked in a box for 10 years. We're not starting from nothing, Selene. We're starting from something that has been compressed under enormous pressure for a very long time. He positions himself across from me, a different stance now, less attack posture, more patient readiness. Don't think about surviving, he says. You're extraordinary at surviving. Think about something else. His copper eyes hold mine. What do you want? The question lands differently than I expect it to. What do I want? When did anyone last ask me that? When did I last ask myself? To never be helpless again, I say, and the words come from somewhere so far down they surprise me on the way out. Then stop performing helplessness, he says. Your body knows more than your training does. Let it. He attacks again. And this time something shifts. My wolf surges up through the residual wolfsbane fog like a swimmer breaking the surface, and she is furious in the best possible way, furious with the clean forward-moving fury of something that has been penned too long and finally has a direction to run in, and my body moves before I decide to move it, dropping under Ember's strike and bringing my own arm up and across in an arc that he blocks easily but that lands, that actually connects with the guard of his block, and the sound of it and the feeling of it and the look on his face. Approval. Actual approval, unguarded. There and then quickly professional again, but I saw it. Better, he says. Again. We train until the thorn-waste light shifts from grey to the flat pale gold that passes for afternoon here. My body accumulates a thorough inventory of new bruises. I learn that I am faster than I thought and weaker in my upper body than I need to be, and that my instincts, when I stop overriding them with 10 years of practiced smallness, are considerably better than nothing. During a water break, Ember sits on a fallen log and watches me catch my breath. Your power, he says. The celestial fire. Can you call it now? Deliberately? I close my eyes and reach for it. It's there, warmer than it was yesterday, closer to the surface, flickering like a candle flame in a room with no drafts. When I try to grasp it, it doesn't vanish so much as recede, pulling back the way something alive pulls back from unfamiliar hands. Not reliably, I admit. It comes when I'm frightened or angry. I can't seem to find it when I'm calm. That's called reactive power. He holds out the water skin when I open my eyes. It's the baseline. Every untrained celestial starts there. The power responds to threat because threat is what called it out first. It's learned the pattern. He pauses. We need to teach it a different pattern. How? By finding what lives underneath the fear and the anger. He meets my eyes. What was in your mind when the light came out in the forest? When you stopped those wolves? I think about it. Rage, I say. 10 years of it. And underneath the rage. Longer pause. Grief, I say. My grandmother. Everyone they've taken. Everyone still in chains. And underneath the grief. I look at him. Love, I say quietly. I think. The people I love. The people I want to protect. I pause. The people I haven't met yet who deserve better than what they have. Ember is quiet for a moment that has a particular quality to it. The quality of someone hearing something they already believe confirmed. That, he says, is where your fire actually lives. Not in the fear. Not even in the anger. The fear and anger are just the doors it breaks down when it has no other way out. He leans forward slightly. Your grandmother's journal. Did you find the meditation passages? The breathing techniques? The visualization work? Those are the key. He stands, and there's something almost careful in the way he's speaking now, like he's handling something he doesn't want to damage. Your line's power isn't a weapon, Selene. It was never meant to be primarily a weapon. It's a restoration. The celestial fire purifies, heals, breaks bonds that were forged wrongly. The reason it's been used as a weapon in your case is because terror is a more reliable trigger than hope when you've spent your life in survival mode. Something in my chest opens slightly, like a window in a room that has been closed too long. So I need to learn to access it from hope instead of terror. From love, he says simply. From the knowledge of what you're fighting for, not what you're fighting against. He pulls something from his inner pocket and holds it out. A pendant. Small, worked silver, shaped into a crescent moon set inside a ring of tiny flame shapes. The ashbourne mark, the same as the one pressed into the journal cover. The chain is delicate but unbroken, the silver warm rather than cold, as though it has been kept close to a body for a long time. Where did you? Your grandmother gave it to me before she died, he says. She called it a focus. Something to hold the intention in when the power feels too large to contain. He meets my eyes. She said to give it to you when you were ready to stop running from what you are. My hand shakes slightly when I take it. The silver is warm in my palm, genuinely warm, not body heat, something intrinsic to the metal itself, and when my wolf feels it she goes very still in the way animals go still in the presence of something they recognize at a level deeper than experience. She knew I'd be here, I say. She planned for all of this. She hoped, Ember says, quiet. She made contingencies for her hope. There's a difference. A pause. She was an extraordinary wolf, your grandmother. I close my hand around the pendant. The days that follow blur together in the way days blur when they are full, each one distinct in its details and experiences, but accumulating into a texture rather than a sequence. Ember wakes me before dawn. We train in the clearing, combat first, my body learning things it should have been learning for years and absorbing them with a hunger that surprises me. Then power work, meditation, breath, the painstaking practice of finding my fire from stillness rather than crisis. Lyra comes on the 4th day. She arrives like she does everything. I will learn, efficiently and without announcement, stepping out of the thornwaste tree line while Ember and I are in the middle of a sparring session, watching us for a full minute before either of us notices her. She is lean and angular, silver-streaked dark hair cut practically short, amber eyes that catalog everything they land on. She wears her scars the way Ember wears his, not hidden, not displayed, simply present, part of the record of a life. The Thornwaste settlement is asking questions, she says to Ember, by way of greeting. They want to know if the rumor is true. Which rumor, Ember says, not lowering his guard from our sparring stance. That you found the Ashbourne heir. Her amber eyes move to me with the frank assessment of someone who has learned to take inventory quickly. That she's alive and she's here and she actually has the bloodline power. Tell them it's true, I say. Lyra looks at me for a moment. Then she smiles, brief, sharp, the smile of someone who doesn't do it often and means it when they do. She'll do, she says to Ember. I'm standing right here, I say. I know, she says. That's why I said it to him. If you weren't worth talking about, I'd have said it to you. Lyra, I will discover, is the most reliably honest person in the Thornwaste, which makes her simultaneously invaluable and exhausting. She teaches me things Ember doesn't, the dirty, unprincipled, deeply practical fighting techniques of someone who has survived entirely by being willing to do what the other person assumed she wouldn't. Ranked wolves expect deference, she explains, circling me in the clearing one afternoon. It's been trained into the people around them so thoroughly that even in a fight, even when someone is trying to kill them, there's a half-second hesitation. A ghost of the old submission response. She stops in front of me. You need to kill that ghost. It will get you killed more reliably than anything Cain can throw at you. How? Practice. She attacks without warning, and I respond, not perfectly, not cleanly, but without the half-second hesitation, and she nods with the precise, minimal approval of a teacher who doesn't give it easily. Like that. Again. In the evenings, the three of us sit by the fire in the cabin and I read from my grandmother's journal. Not privately anymore. I've moved past the initial grief of it into something more purposeful, and her words have become a kind of shared text, something we study together. Her notes on celestial power, on pack dynamics, on the history of the Ashbourne line and what it was built to do. She understood politics, Lyra says one evening, leaning over my shoulder to read a passage. This section on coalition building, this is sophisticated. She knew Cain couldn't be beaten by force alone. She knew it would take a movement, Ember says. He's on the other side of the fire, and the firelight does something to his face in the evenings that it doesn't do in the flat grey training light. Softens the damage, brings out the warmth in those copper eyes, makes him look less like someone built for war and more like someone who chose it because nothing less would do. That's what the Thornwaste settlement is. That's what we've been building. How many? I ask. 200, maybe a few more. He meets my eyes across the fire. Wolves from 6 different packs. All of them with reasons to want Cain's empire ended. All of them waiting for someone who could unite them into something more than a collection of exiles. They've been waiting for you, Lyra says, and she says it the way she says everything, without embellishment, as simple fact. Some of them for years. The weight of it is different now than it was in the cave, those first days. Less like something crushing and more like something I am learning to carry, adjusting my posture to accommodate it, finding that I am stronger than I thought. One morning on the 3rd week, during the meditation work, I find it. Not dramatically. Not in a crisis. Sitting cross-legged in the clearing with the pendant warm in my closed hand and my grandmother's breathing technique working through me, I let myself think of the people I love. My grandmother's hands. The way she taught, patient and fierce in equal measure. The children in Ashvale's slave quarters who have never known a morning without a collar. Roan's little brother, 7 years old, learning already how to make himself invisible. All of them. The faces I know and the faces I'll never know. The hundreds of wolves in Cain's territories who wake every morning to the same calculation I woke to for 10 years. The fire comes. Not an explosion. Not a crisis response. A bloom. The word arrives with the sensation, exactly right, like something opening from the inside, warmth spreading outward from my center to my hands in slow controlled waves, silver gold light filling my palms and staying, steady and contained in mine, answering to the shape of my intention. I hold it for 30 seconds before it fades. When I open my eyes, Ember is staring at me from across the clearing. His expression is unguarded in a way I haven't seen before, the warrior's mask entirely absent, replaced by something open and almost wondering, the face of someone watching something they believed in finally becoming real. There, he says softly. There she is. The warmth of it, not the fire, but his expression, the quality of being seen that way, is something I don't have a category for. I file it carefully in the place where I keep things too large for immediate processing. Again, I say, and he smiles, really smiles, not the ghost of one, and says, again, that evening, when the training is done and Lyra has gone back to the settlement and Ember and I are sitting on opposite sides of the fire with my grandmother's journal open between us, he is quieter than usual. What happens when we're ready? I ask. What does it actually look like? You issue a formal challenge to Cain, he says. Alpha to Alpha. Single combat for leadership of Ashvale. He watches the fire. Ancient law. He can't refuse without forfeiting his claim. I'm not an Alpha. You're celestial bloodline. Under old law, that supersedes pack rank entirely. He meets my eyes. He knows this. He'll have been dreading it since the moment he realized you survived. And if I win, every wolf in Ashvale falls under your authority. Slaves become pack members. Cain's system ends, at least there, and the shockwave of it travels outward to his other territories. A pause. It won't be clean. It won't be fast. But it's the beginning. And if I lose, the fire crackles. Somewhere in the thorn waste, something moves through the dead trees, and we both listen for a moment, and it passes. You won't lose, he says. That's not an answer. No. He looks at me steadily. It isn't. But it's what I believe, and I've learned to trust what I believe about you. The quality of his looking at me has been shifting, gradually, over these weeks in the way that temperatures shift, imperceptibly day to day, undeniable across a season. I have been noticing it the way you notice something you are not yet ready to name, filing it alongside the warmth of his expression when I hold the fire, the particular carefulness with which he handles the subject of my grandmother, the way he positions himself between me and the tree line without appearing to do it deliberately. Why does it matter to you that I don't lose? I ask. Specifically. Not the revolution. Not the promise. You. His quiet for long enough that the fire settles and I add another piece of wood to it, and the new flames change the light between us. Because, he says finally, I have spent 7 years being certain that survival was the only thing on offer. That hope was a trap and caring about outcomes beyond your immediate ones was how you got broken. He turns the piece of firewood in his hands, not looking at me. And then I found you, and you have somehow managed to maintain the capacity to hope after 10 years of being given every reason to abandon it. And I find that. He stops. Remarkable, he says, quieter. I find it remarkable. I find you remarkable. And I am not accustomed to finding things remarkable, which means I am not certain what to do with it. The fire is very warm. The thorn waste is very quiet. I look at this man, this scarred, careful, fiercely competent man who keeps watch outside my window and teaches me to fight and holds things my grandmother entrusted to him for 10 years and looks at me like I am the answer to a question he'd stopped believing was answerable. And I feel something settle into place in my chest like a stone finding the bottom of still water. Not rushed, not desperate, just real and present and quietly enormous. What do you do with remarkable things? I ask. He looks up. I'm learning, he says. And somewhere in the dark outside, the thorn waste holds its corrupted breath, and in the morning there will be training, and pain, and the long difficult work of becoming what I need to be. But tonight the fire is warm. And that is enough. Chapter 5. Ember wasn't lying about pushing further. He gives me one more day of the measured training, the careful escalation, the controlled burns of power work that leave me exhausted but intact. One more evening by the fire with my grandmother's journal and the particular quality of his company that I have stopped pretending I don't look forward to. Then on the morning of the 4th week he takes me somewhere new. Deep into the thorn waste, past the shelter's familiar half-mile radius, into the part of the dead forest that even Ember navigates with additional attention. The trees here are more severely altered, the blackening deeper, the wrong-angled branches more pronounced, the air thicker with that ancient watchful weight that my wolf tracks with her ears flat and her attention fully forward. We reach a clearing that feels deliberately shaped, though nothing living has shaped it. A circle of dead trees standing back from a space of bare dark earth, ancient stones rising at intervals around the perimeter, carved with symbols I recognize from my grandmother's journal. Celestial markers. The language of the Ashbourne line, written in stone old enough that the thorn waste corruption hasn't been able to fully claim them. This place, I say, was a celestial site before the thorn waste was the thorn waste, Ember confirms. Before Cain's campaign poisoned the territory. Your grandmother described it in the journal. She trained here as a girl. He looks around the clearing with the expression of someone seeing history layered over present. The stone still holds some of the old resonance. It should help with what we're doing today. Which is what, exactly? He faces me fully. Today we find out how much pressure your control can hold before it breaks, he says. And then we build it back stronger. I look at him. That sounds like a description of breaking something on purpose. It is. Ember, your power has one reliable trigger right now, he says, and his voice is the instructor's voice, clinical and precise. Crisis. Physical threat. The spike of adrenaline that comes with genuine danger. That trigger will serve you exactly once in a formal challenge, the moment Cain first strikes. He holds my gaze. After that, if you've spent your fire in the first 30 seconds, you have nothing left. We need to teach your power to respond to your will, not your fear. And the only way to do that is to exhaust the fear response until something else takes over. I finish. I understand the logic. I hate the logic. You're going to put me in real danger. Controlled danger. Those words don't belong together. No, he agrees. They don't. That's why this is hard. He shows me what he's carrying. I've seen the knife before. It lives on the left side of his weapon's belt, a short blade with a plain handle, practical rather than ornamental. What I haven't noticed until now is the material. The blade has a faint silver sheen, not pure silver but enough of a concentration that it will burn on contact with wolf skin. Will trigger the defensive response. Will hurt. I need you to trust me, he says. You keep asking me that, because it keeps being relevant. I look at the knife. At him. At the ancient stones around the clearing with their carved celestial markers. Standing watch the way they have stood watch through things worse than this. What I said before, he says, quieter, about finding you remarkable. I meant it. I mean it constantly, actually, which is, he stops. Restarts. I am not going to let anything happen to you. I need you to know that. Not as your trainer. As. He stops again. As whatever you are to me, he finishes, and the honesty of the imprecision is more affecting than any polished declaration would have been. Something warm moves through my chest and settles. Okay, I say. Okay. Do what you need to do. I trust you. The relief that crosses his face is brief and unguarded, and he covers it quickly with the instructor's focus. But I saw it, and I file it in the place where I keep the other things I've seen in him that he doesn't know I've noticed. We'll start small, he says. The goal isn't pain for its own sake. The goal is to trigger the fire at a low threshold and teach you to catch it before it explodes. Shape it. Hold it. Send it exactly where you intend, at exactly the intensity you intend. He positions himself in front of me. Ready. I square my shoulders. Ready. The first cut is shallow, inside of my left forearm, barely breaking the skin, a precise controlled line. The silver content in the blade makes it burn immediately, a disproportionate flare of pain for such a small wound, and my fire responds exactly as he predicted. Instant, reflexive, erupting outward in all directions before I have any relationship to it at all. The light blasts out of me and Ember takes it without flinching, the wave of silver gold washing over him and past him into the dead trees, and he's already talking. There, that's it, catch it. I try. It's like trying to grab running water with open hands. The fire is there and present and absolutely mine in the sense that it comes from me, but the relationship between my will and its behavior is almost non-existent. It does what it does, and I watch it happen from what feels like slightly too far away. Again, he says. Other arm. This time, as soon as you feel it start, imagine the pendant. Imagine your grandmother's handwriting on the first page. The second cut. The fire comes. I reach for the image, and almost catch it. For approximately 1 second, the edges of the explosion narrow, the light concentrating slightly, before it bursts outward anyway. Better, Ember says immediately. You felt that. I felt it. Again. We work through the morning this way. Cut, fire, attempt to shape, fail. Cut, fire, attempt, partial success, collapse. The silver burns accumulate on my forearms, shallow but persistent. The healing slow enough that by mid-morning I can feel each one individually in the way you feel a collection of small bruises. Not debilitating, but present, a constant low-level reminder of what this costs. And I cannot do it. I can narrow the fire. I can, on my best attempts, hold it for 2 or 3 seconds before it either collapses back into nothing or explodes outward uncontrolled. But the sustained, directed, intentional use of it, calling it up from stillness and sending it precisely where I mean it to go, remains somewhere just past my reach, and the gap between where I am and where I need to be feels, by early afternoon, like something I am not going to be able to close. Again, Ember says. I can't, I say. You can. I said I can't. The words come out harder than I intend, fraying at the edges in a way I don't want him to hear, and he hears anyway. I have been trying for 6 hours, and I am not. My voice does something I hate. I'm not getting better at this, Ember. I'm just accumulating burns and failing in slightly different configurations. Selene, I know what you're going to say. I step back from him, needing distance, needing a moment where his steadiness isn't right there, making my own unsteadiness more obvious. You're going to tell me I'm stronger than I think and I've survived worse and I have everything I need. And all of that is, I know you believe it. But from where I'm standing, right now, I am a badly trained half-feral Omega who has made a promise to hundreds of wolves that I am completely unqualified to keep, and I am standing in a dead forest trying to learn magic from a knife. And I stop, press my hands against my face. Breathe. I'm just a slave, I say, into my own palms. That's all I know how to be. I've been pretending I'm something else, and I don't know how to. Stop. His voice is quiet and absolute, and I stop. Take your hands away from your face. I do, because something in his voice requires it. Not a command, not an alpha's authority, something more personal than that. He is standing closer than I realized, close enough that I can see the individual details of his expression. And what's there isn't patience, isn't the instructor's measured encouragement, isn't anything managed or constructed. It is fury, not at me. For me. You are not a slave, he says. You were enslaved. Those are not the same thing, and I need you to understand that they are not the same thing because the difference matters more than anything else I can teach you. His voice stays low and steady, and the intensity of it moves through me like the fire moves through the clearing stones, finding the resonance already there, amplifying it. A slave is what you are. Enslaved is what was done to you. He takes one step closer. You have spent 10 years surviving a system designed to make you believe the first one. I am telling you, with everything I have, that it is a lie. It has always been a lie. Your grandmother knew it was a lie, and she kept the proof of it in a journal for you to find when you were ready. Then why can't I? Because you're trying to control something born from love by hurting yourself, he says. And your fire knows the difference. I go still. Your power is not a trauma response, he continues. I've been triggering it like one because it was the fastest way to make it accessible, but that's not what it is at its root. Your grandmother's notes, the section on celestial fire's original purpose. It was never a weapon, I say slowly. She wrote that. It was a restoration. A liberation, he says. Literally. The celestial line used it to break forced bonds, to free wolves from corrupted pack ties, to heal territory that had been damaged by dark alpha power. He meets my eyes. Your fire is most itself when you aim it at freedom, not when you aim it at defense. Then I've been aiming wrong. You've been aiming the only way you had access to. He doesn't look away. Now you have access to the real direction. So I need you to stop thinking about the pain and tell me, who are you fighting for? Not against Cain. For whom? My grandmother's face. Clear and immediate, her silver hair and her steady hands, and the way she looked at me across the judgment ring before she died, the word she shaped with her lips. Roan's brother. 7 years old. Learning to be invisible. The woman in the Ashvale kitchens who snuck me an extra portion of bread every third day with the particular practiced casualness of someone who has calculated exactly how much she can give away without being caught, and gives that much, every time, without fail. The Omega children who have never once in their lives woken up and known for certain they would be safe today. All of them. The ones I know and the ones I'll never meet. The hundreds and hundreds of wolves living inside Cain's system right now, surviving the way I survived, shrinking the way I shrank. The fire doesn't come like the other times. It doesn't erupt, doesn't explode, doesn't blast outward with the panicked energy of something trying to protect itself. It rises, slowly, steadily, from somewhere so deep in me it might be the same place my grandmother's voice comes from when I read her handwriting. It rises like water finding its level, filling my hands from the inside out, silver gold and warm and controlled, shaped by intention rather than fear, burning with the specific temperature of something that knows exactly what it's for. I hold it. 10 seconds. 20. 30. It doesn't waver. I look up at Ember. His face is open in a way I have only seen once before. That first morning I held the fire in the cabin clearing, the unguarded, wondering expression he covered quickly. He isn't covering it this time. There, he says, barely above a whisper. There it is. I can feel the difference, I say, and my voice comes out wondering. It doesn't feel like surviving. It feels like what you actually are, he says. The fire in my hands is steady and warm and entirely mine. And I understand, finally, what my grandmother meant when she wrote in the journal's first pages. The fire is not what you do. It is what you are when you stop pretending to be less. I let it fade slowly, deliberately, and the fading feels like a choice rather than a failure. Ember lets out a breath that I think he has been holding for some time. That's enough for today, he says. I want to do it again. Tomorrow. Ember, you've pushed your power further today than any untrained celestial should be able to, he says, and there's something in his voice that I recognize after a moment as the particular strain of someone who has been managing their own feelings through a long, difficult day and is approaching the end of their management capacity. And I have been cutting you with a silver knife for 6 hours, which, he stops. Tomorrow. We'll do it again tomorrow. I look at my forearms. The shallow burns, already beginning the slow process of healing now that the training is over and my wolf can attend to them. Evidence of a day's work. They don't hurt, I say, which is not entirely true but is true enough. They should, he says, and he reaches out before he decides to, his fingers very light on my wrist, tilting my arm toward the flat pale light to see the burns more clearly, and the touch is so careful, so exactly calibrated to hurt nothing, that the tenderness of it affects me more than the cuts did. I'm fine, I say. I know you're fine, he says. You're always fine. You've made an art form of being fine. He doesn't release my wrist. I'm asking you not to be fine for a moment. With me. If you want. The clearing is quiet around us. The ancient stones stand watch. The thorn waste holds its breath. I'm tired, I say. Actually tired, not the performing okay kind. I know. And today was hard. The part where I couldn't do it. That was hard in a way that's about more than the training. I know that too. Because every time I fail at something I can hear Cain's voice explaining why failure is my natural state, I say, and the honesty of it surprises me, the way real honesty often does. It's out before you've decided to let it out. And I have to work against that voice every time. It's exhausting. Ember's thumb moves, the smallest possible motion, against the inside of my wrist. For what it's worth, he says quietly, when I watch you work, when I watch you get up after every failure and try again, I hear nothing resembling Cain's voice. I hear something that sounds more like your grandmother. I look at him. Determined, he says, and completely, absolutely certain that the thing she's reaching for is real, even when she can't quite touch it yet. The amber copper of his eyes in the flat thorn-waste light. The scars that are a document of everything he's survived. The way he holds my wrist like it's something worth being careful with. Ember, I say. Selene, he says back, and the way he says my name, with that particular quality of attention, like my name means something specific and important when it's in his mouth, makes everything in me go very still. When this is over, I say. When Cain is, when it's done. What do you want? He is quiet for a long moment. I want, he says carefully, like someone handling something they don't want to drop, to find out what I'm like when I'm not defined by what I'm fighting against. A pause. I want to find out what we're like. We, I say. We, he confirms. And he says it like it's already true. Like it's been true for a while and has only just gotten around to saying it out loud. A sound from the tree line. Both of us register it simultaneously. The particular quality of sound that isn't wind, isn't the settling of dead wood, is something that breathes. Ember releases my wrist and turns, his whole body shifting register instantly into that lethal readiness. Shadow taken, he says quietly. At least 3. Drawn by the power output, probably. I pull my fire up, steady now, controlled, rising from the right place. Together? I ask. He glances back at me, and the expression on his face, the specific way it arranges itself when he looks at me, the thing I have no name for yet, is brief and brilliant before the warrior's focus takes over. Together, he says. The tree line erupts, and we move toward it, not away, which is new, which is the most important thing I have learned today, that moving toward the thing you fear, when you know what you're fighting for, feels nothing like recklessness. It feels like finally being exactly what you were always meant to be. Chapter 6. The Thorn Waste at night is a different country. I know this intellectually. Ember has told me, Lyra has told me, my grandmother's journal has 3 pages dedicated to the specific dangers of the corrupted territory after dark and the ways in which those dangers differ from the daytime variety. But knowing a thing and standing inside it are different in the way that knowing fire burns and putting your hand in fire are different. The light dies fast here. Not the gradual darkening of a normal evening, but something more abrupt. The flat, pale daylight simply withdrawing, as though it was never committed to being here in the first place. The temperature drops with it, a cold that has more character than regular cold. It presses, specifically, against the places where you are least defended. The 3 shapes that emerge from the tree line do so with a wrongness that registers before I can identify its components. It isn't any single detail but the accumulation of them. The way they move with purpose but without the fluid intelligence of a wolf who still has a wolf's mind directing them, the patchy degraded quality of their coats, the eyes that glow a color that has no warmth in it, sickly and fixed. Shadow taken. Wolves who came to the Thorn Waste and stayed until the corruption finished the conversation. The largest one is ahead of the other 2, and it stops when it sees us, its ruined head tilting at an angle that would be curious if there were any curiosity left in it. What remains is only appetite, the specific, uncomplicated hunger of something that has been reduced to its most basic function. The fire, Ember says, very quietly, not looking away from the shadow taken. Don't wait for them to engage. Your range is longer than mine. I know. And don't burn everything you have in the first 30 seconds. I know, I say again. And then, because I want him to be certain, I know now. That's different. The shadow taken lunges. Not the one we've been watching. The one we haven't been watching, coming from our left, from a gap in the tree line that neither of us tracked carefully enough. It is fast in the way corrupted things are often fast, the wrongness of them extending to their movement, physics slightly inadequately applied. My fire rises before I decide to raise it. But it rises right, from the deep place, shaped by intention, silver gold and directed, a concentrated burst that I aim at the creature's chest rather than letting it scatter in all directions. The shadow taken hits the light and screams, a sound that has no wolf in it anymore, and staggers back, the celestial fire doing something to the corruption in its body that regular fire wouldn't. Not just burning but disrupting, the silver gold light finding the wrongness and arguing with it at a fundamental level. The creature doesn't fall. But it retreats, which I have not managed to make anything retreat before through deliberate action. And the fact of it hits me like cold water, clarifying, sharpening. I can do this. Ember engages the large one directly, and I understand in watching him fight that everything I've seen in training has been a managed version of what he actually is. He moves through the shadow taken the way the Thorn Waste moves through everything, completely, without negotiation, finding the gaps and filling them with exactly the right application of force. He is not fighting the way Ashvale's ranked wolves fight, with the performance of dominance that Cain's system rewards. He is fighting the way something fights when fighting is simply what it does, efficiently and without theater. The third shadow taken circles me. I track it with the fire ready in my hands, watching its approach angle, remembering what Lyra taught me about circular movement and where the real attack comes from relative to where the feinting approach suggests. It's going to come from your right, Ember says from across the clearing, still engaged with his own opponent. The circle is a distraction. I see it. Don't throw everything you have. At once, I know, you've mentioned. The shadow taken launches from my right, exactly as predicted, and I pivot and send a controlled burst of fire at its legs rather than its center mass, not trying to unmake it but trying to stop its approach. And the fire takes its front legs and it crashes forward, and I step aside with something that is almost graceful, and hit it again from above as it passes, this time at the base of its neck where the corruption seems to concentrate, where the glow is brightest. It shrieks, collapses, doesn't rise again. I stare at it for a moment. Good, Ember says, and there's something in his voice beyond the instructor's measured approval. Something faster and less controlled than that. Something that sounds almost like relief given a single syllable to work with. The first shadow taken, recovered from the initial blast, comes again. The second one has gotten back to its feet. They are working together now, or doing the shadow taken equivalent of it, coordinating without communicating, the way things coordinate when they share an appetite rather than a plan. I put myself back to back with Ember without discussing it. He doesn't comment, just adjusts his positioning to make room for mine. And we are briefly a single thing, two people covering each other's angles, his strength and my fire making a combination that neither of us is alone. This is different from training. Training has an end point built into it, a moment where Ember will stop and assess and tell me what I did wrong. This has no end point, and there is no one who will stop it, and the difference is enormous, and I am terrified, and the terror is fuel now, feeding the fire rather than drowning it. And I understand in this moment something that I will try to explain to Lyra later and not quite manage. Fear and fire are not opposites. They never were. What matters is what you do with the combination. The two remaining shadow taken rush us simultaneously. I send a wide fan of fire to the left while Ember drives forward to the right, and the coordination of it is almost wordless, almost instinctive, and the shadow taken scatter from it rather than pushing through. We have maybe 40 seconds before they regroup. There are more coming, Ember says. I can hear them. At least 4 more in the near tree line. How many can you handle? Fewer if I'm also tracking you. Then don't track me. Selene. I have the fire and I know how to use it now. Fight your fight. I'll fight mine. He looks at me over his shoulder. Copper eyes in the thorn waist dark. If you get overwhelmed, I'll tell you. Tell me before, not after. Ember. Yes. Go. He goes. What follows is the most frightened I have been since the cell in Ashvale, which is saying something considerable, and also, and this is the part one will spend time processing afterward, the most fully myself. For more shadow taken emerge from the tree line in ragged sequence, drawn by the power output and the noise and whatever passes for hunger in things that have been reduced to hunger. I move through the clearing, not staying still, using the ancient stones as cover and reference points, sending controlled bursts of fire rather than the wild explosions I've been unlearning. I miss. Several times. The shadow taken are fast and my aim is still developing, and once one of them gets close enough that I feel its corrupted breath on my face before I manage to turn it back with a burst of fire at near contact range, which burns my own hands in the process, the celestial fire briefly too concentrated for my skin to handle without consequence. But I don't go down. I keep moving. Keep choosing the right direction. Keep finding the fire in the deep place, the love place, the place that knows what this is for, and every time it rises it is steadier and more accurate than the last. Across the clearing, Ember is a systematic force of destruction, dismantling shadow taken with the methodical efficiency of someone who has been doing this for years and has long since moved past the fear of it into something more workable. I lose track of counting. I lose track of time. At some point the clearing is quiet again, and I am standing in the center of it breathing hard, my burned hands trembling, and every shadow taken that came into this clearing is no longer moving. Aurora, Ember says. I turn. He is crossing the clearing toward me at speed, his expression dismantling into something I have not seen on him before, raw and unmanaged. Fear and something more than fear, and I realize a moment before he reaches me that the word he said was Selene, but the word he said sounded like the word don't, like it was the short form of don't you dare be hurt. Don't you dare. I'm fine, I say. He reaches me and his hands go to my face, both of them, framing it the way you frame something you need to see clearly, and he looks at me with those copper eyes and performs the assessment of someone checking for damage with their whole attention. Your hands, he says. The close-range fire. I'm already healing. Let me see. I hold them out. The burns across my palms are shallow, the skin reddened and tight, already beginning the slow work of recovery. Ember takes my hands in his, very carefully, his fingers under mine, and examines them with an expression that I can only describe as the expression of someone who has discovered that they care about something more than they had accounted for and are currently in the process of recalculating accordingly. They'll heal, I say. I know they'll heal. His voice is rougher than usual. I know that. Then why do you look like? Because knowing something heals doesn't mean watching it happen is comfortable, he says, and there is something in the way he says it that is about considerably more than the burns on my hands. And we both know it, and neither of us says so, and the not saying so has its own particular weight that settles between us like something with presence. He doesn't release my hands. The clearing around us is still, the ancient stones standing their patient watch, the thorn waste holding its particular brand of heavy silence. Above us, through the dead branches, the moon is visible, a thin crescent, pale and clear, and when I look at it I feel something pull, a deep resonant tug that originates somewhere below thought and above instinct. The moon throne, my grandmother wrote. The source. The original power. In moments of absolute necessity, when all roads are closed and the cost has been counted and accepted, the heir of the Ashbourne line may call upon what the moon holds in trust. But understand, the calling is not free. The moon gives nothing it does not eventually ask back. Know the price before you reach. There's something else, I say. Ember looks up from my hands. In the journal. A moon calling, a way to access the original celestial power directly. I watch his face. You knew about it. A pause that confirms it before he speaks. Yes, he says. You didn't tell me. You weren't ready. I'm telling you now that I want to know. He releases my hands slowly and straightens, and the expression on his face is the one he uses when he's about to say something he knows I won't like and has decided to say it anyway because he is constitutionally incapable of protecting me from information that might be useful, which is one of the things I have come to value about him. The moon calling is the full power of the Ashbourne line accessed directly, he says. Not the fire you've been training. Not the restoration work. The original source. Your grandmother could do it. Her mother before her. A pause. It's capable of things your trained power isn't. Wider reach. Deeper work. The kind of liberation that doesn't just break individual chains but breaks the pattern that makes chains possible. That sounds like exactly what we need. It also carries a price your body may not be ready to pay. What price? The moon calling draws on your life force, he says. Not metaphorically. Literally. It uses you as a channel for power that is larger than you, and the channel sustains damage in the process. An untrained celestial who calls the moon. Could burn out, I say. Could die, he says. Yes. The thorn waste is very quiet. But a trained celestial, I say. One who knows how to manage the channel. Who has learned to control the flow rather than just conduct it. Is considerably less likely to die, he says. Yes. So we train for it. Selene. It's the only thing that ends this completely, I say. Not just Cain. Not just Ashvale. The journal says the moon calling can break force-packed bonds at a territorial level. It can undo the structural corruption he's built into his entire system, not just free the wolves who are physically present. That means all 7 territories. I meet his eyes. All at once. He looks at me for a long time. You read further than I thought, he says. I read everything. Another long look. You're not ready, he says. Yet. But, he stops. Reconsiders. Continues. With another few weeks of controlled power work, with the right preparation, it's possible you could channel enough of it to use it as a finishing strike rather than a sustained working. Brief, targeted, managed. He pauses. Possible. Not certain. Possible is enough, I say. Possible is more than I had yesterday. Something moves through his expression. The particular conflict of a person who wants to protect someone from risk and has enough respect for that person to understand that the protection is not his to give. All right, he says. All right. We'll add it to the training. His voice is steady and his eyes are not quite, and both of those things are true at once. We'll build up to it carefully and safely and with full preparation, and you will not attempt it without me present, and you will tell me the moment you feel the channel exceeding your capacity. Those are a lot of conditions. They are the conditions under which I am willing to watch you attempt something that could kill you, he says. Take them or I teach you nothing more about it. Fine, I say. Fine, he says. We stand in the clearing in the aftermath of battle, my hands healing between us, the moon a thin pale crescent overhead, and I think about what my grandmother wrote, know the price before you reach, and I think about all the wolves in Cain's 7 territories who are paying a price right now, tonight, in the dark of their collars and their chains. And I think that some prices are worth paying and some aren't, and the distinction between the two is never as clear as you want it to be. Beforehand. Ember, I say. Selene. When we were fighting. Back to back. I pause. I've never had someone fight alongside me. Not once. He looks at me. What was it like? He asks, and I understand that he's asking because he wants to know how I experienced it, not because he doesn't know what he experienced himself. Like the difference, I say slowly, between surviving and actually being alive. His expression does the thing it does, the unguarded thing, the thing with no name for it yet. And he reaches out and tucks a strand of hair back from my face with the back of 2 fingers. Careful, not quite a caress, but not a caress either. Rest, he says softly. We have more to build tomorrow. We, I say, the way I said it before, testing the weight of it. We, he confirms. And above us the crescent moon holds its silver pale light over the thorn waste, and somewhere in the corrupted dark the old stones stand their patient ancient watch, and tomorrow there will be more training, and more work, and the long road toward everything that has to happen. But tonight Ember walks beside me back through the dead trees, close enough that our arms brush with every other step, and neither of us moves away, and the thorn waste is quiet around us, and that is enough. More than enough. Everything, actually. Chapter 7. They come at dusk. I watch from the cabin window as they filter through the dead trees, and the word filter is wrong. They don't filter. They flow, dozens and then scores and then hundreds of wolves emerging from the thorn waste corrupted dark into the clearing below the standing stones, and the sight of them does something complicated to my chest that I don't have immediate language for. They are every shape of wolf that exists. Old and young, scarred and whole, moving with the particular physical vocabulary of people who have survived hard things in different ways. Some with the careful deliberateness of wolves who learned long ago that moving too quickly attracts attention. Some with the barely-contained restlessness of wolves who have been waiting so long for action that stillness has become its own kind of suffering. Some in groups, talking quietly, touching each other's arms and shoulders in the way of people who have built something real together in a difficult place. Some alone, standing slightly apart, carrying the specific solitude of people who lost everyone and have not yet found their way back to the habit of company. All of them, every one, carrying in their eyes that thing I recognize because I have worn it myself for 10 years. Hunger, not for food. For the thing you are owed that has been stolen from you for so long you have almost stopped believing it was ever real. Nervous. Ember's voice, close behind me. I didn't hear him come in, which means either he has gotten quieter or I have gotten worse at listening, and I suspect it is the former because nothing about sharing space with him has made me less attentive to where he is. Terrified, I say honestly. Good. He comes to stand beside me at the window, close enough that I can feel his warmth on my left side. Outside, the wolves continue to gather, the clearing filling steadily. Fear means you understand the stakes. I understand the stakes, I say. I've understood the stakes since I was 6 years old and watched Cain explain them with a torch and an iron post. Ember is quiet for a moment. What you're about to do, he says, is harder than fighting. Fighting has a clear objective. This requires something different. What? Yourself. He turns to look at me directly. Not a performance of what you think a leader should be. Not an imitation of strength. Just what you actually are, shown plainly, without the armor you've been wearing since childhood. A pause. That is the hardest thing I know how to ask of anyone. What if what I actually am isn't enough? It is. How can you? Because I know what I'm looking at. His voice is simple and absolute. I have been watching you for weeks, Selene. Training with you, fighting beside you, reading your grandmother's journal alongside you. I know exactly what you are. Something quieter. More exactly, maybe, than you do. He holds something out. A garment folded over his arm, deep blue-gray fabric. The color of the sky at the precise moment between dusk and true dark, when the light is giving up but the dark hasn't fully committed. Simple in cut but not in quality, the fabric moving when he shifts it in a way that speaks to care in the making. Lyra found it, he says. In the settlement stores. She said. He stops, and a very faint color moves under the scarring on his jaw that I find unexpectedly affecting. She said you should look like what you are tonight. I take it from him. The fabric is cool and real in my hands. Not the rough undyed cloth of slave clothing, not the worn dark colors of practical exile wear. Something made with intention, made with the idea of someone mattering enough to be dressed with care. I'll step outside, Ember says. Ember, He turns back. Thank you, I say. Not just for this. For all of it. He looks at me for a moment with that quality of attention that I have learned to read as him choosing words carefully, weighing them. Don't thank me yet, he says, which is what he always says, and which always means you're welcome in a register he hasn't found his way to saying directly. He closes the door behind him and I change. The dress fits the way things fit when someone has looked at you carefully and made decisions based on what they saw. It settles against my body with a rightness that is almost unsettling. I have worn ill-fitting things for so long that something fitting correctly feels like a mistake, like it will be taken away. I put on my grandmother's pendant. Look at my reflection in the piece of polished metal that serves as the cabin's mirror. The woman looking back at me is not the woman who woke up in a cell 3 weeks ago with silver burns on her wrists and wolfsbane in her blood and 4 hours left until execution. She is not the woman who flinched at footsteps and made herself small and filed everything dangerous away under survive. She is not quite the woman I need to be yet either. But she is the distance between those 2 points, and that distance is real, and it is mine. Lyra arrives without knocking, which is consistent with everything I know about Lyra, and stands in the doorway doing her swift efficient inventory of my appearance. Good, she says. Sit. She does my hair with a focus that is its own form of respect. Not performing gentleness but actually being gentle, her hands moving through the braiding with the precision of someone who knows exactly what she's making and why it matters. She explains as she works. The pattern is celestial traditional, a specific braid configuration worn by Ashborn alphas when they were making themselves known to gathered wolves for the first time. They'll recognize it, she says. The older ones especially. The ones who were alive before Cain moved against your grandmother's line. When they see this braid on you they will understand before you say a word. What will they understand? That she planned for you. Lyra's hands are steady. That she intended you to be here. That your presence tonight is not an accident or a desperate improvisation but the conclusion of something she began. A pause. That changes how they receive you. Significantly. You knew her, I say. My grandmother. I knew of her. I was young. Lyra's hands pause briefly, resume. I remember the way the pack felt before Cain's campaign. There are wolves out in that clearing who remember it too, who have been living in the thorn waste for 18 years carrying the memory of what things were like before. Her voice carries something it doesn't usually carry, something personal, briefly unguarded. What you represent to them is not a political calculation. It's the answer to a question they stopped believing would ever be answered. That's too much, I say quietly. Yes, Lyra agrees. It is. And it's also exactly what it is, and pretending otherwise won't make it lighter. Carry it. She finishes the braid and stands back. Go get your wolf, she says. She's waiting outside. I step out of the cabin. Ember has his back to me, watching the clearing where the gathered wolves mill and wait. And when he hears the door he turns and his face does something that I will think about later when I have time to think about it. The warrior's mask not slipping but simply becoming briefly irrelevant, displaced by something more immediate, his eyes moving over me with an expression he doesn't try to manage. Aurora, he says. My name. My full name that he almost never uses, and something about the way he says it, like it means something specific and enormous in his mouth. Too much. I ask, and I mean the dress, the braid, all of it. The opposite, he says, rough. The exact opposite of too much. The color in his jaw again. He looks away, back toward the clearing, and I watch his profile while he composes himself and he knows I'm watching and does it anyway, which tells me something important about where we are. They are ready, he says. I'm not. I know. He offers his arm. Go anyway. I take it. We walk through the thorn waste toward the clearing, and as we approach I can hear the gathering, the low murmur of hundreds of voices, the particular dense quality of a large group of people in close proximity, the sound of waiting. The standing stones rise ahead, pale in the dusk light, the carved celestial markers on them visible even from this distance. Ember and I step into the clearing. The murmur dies. Hundreds of faces turn toward us, and the silence that follows is the silence of a room in which something expected has finally arrived, a silence that has a shape to it, that holds its breath. I feel them looking at me. Not just at me, at the braid, at the pendant, at the specific way these things speak before I have spoken. I watch the recognition move through the older wolves the way Lyra predicted, first in their eyes, then in the set of their shoulders, then in something more fundamental, something in the body's memory that is older than thought. An older wolf steps forward from the gathered crowd. He moves with the careful economy of a body that has taken significant damage over a long life and has made its peace with the permanent evidence of it. His hair is white, his eyes are pale gray, his face the face of someone who has been deciding what to believe in for decades and has learned to be careful about it. "I am Thorn," he says, "eldest among the Thorn-waste exiles. We have gathered to see the one who carries ashborn blood, to determine for ourselves whether the rumor is truth and whether the truth is worth what it would cost us to follow it." The formal language of old pack protocol. I recognize it from my grandmother's journal, the greeting ritual for a challenge of credibility, the words that begin the testing of a claim. "I don't make claims," I say, and my voice carries in the clearing's strange acoustics, the standing stones doing something to sound that makes it travel farther and more clearly than it should. "I am Selene Vayne, granddaughter of Myra Ashbourne, last living heir of the Ashbourne celestial line. I'm not here to ask you to believe me. I'm here to show you." "Show us what?" Someone calls from the crowd. A younger voice, challenging, not hostile but not willing to be easy either. "What your patience has been waiting for," I say. I close my eyes. Reach for the deep place. Don't look for the fire. Let the fire find what it's looking for, which is not an audience to impress or a demonstration to give but the actual truth of why it exists. The image of every wolf in this clearing carrying their years of exile and loss and hope, carrying the specific unbearable weight of surviving something that took everyone else, carrying it forward into a night when someone is finally standing in the clearing saying, "I see you. I know what you've held. I am here because of what you held." The fire rises. Not the training fire, the controlled small flame I've been practicing. The fire that came out in the forest when I reached for love instead of fear, but fuller now, deeper, weeks of practice giving it channels it didn't have before, and it pours out of me in slow expanding waves, silver gold and warm. And where it touches the gathered wolves, something happens. I can feel it, the way the celestial fire responds to the corruption of the thorn waste that every wolf here carries in their body after years in this place, the dark taint that builds up slowly in the tissue of wolves who stay too long in poisoned territory. The fire finds it the way clean water finds contamination, not with aggression but with remedy, moving through it, burning it away at the cellular level, and the wolves it touches feel it happening, feel the years of corruption leaving them, and the sound that comes from the crowd is, there is no word for it. It is the sound of relief so deep it lives below language, the specific vocalization of pain leaving, of weight that has been carried so long it stopped feeling like weight and started feeling like just the shape of a body, that weight, lifting. Some wolves weep. Some drop to their knees not in submission, but in the specific physical surrender of a person whose legs will no longer support a feeling this size. Some howl, and the howl travels outward into the thorn waste and the dead trees carry it, and for a moment the corrupted forest sounds like what it once was. When the fire fades I am swaying, genuinely depleted, the effort of that breadth of work costing me in a way the training work hasn't. I lock my knees and stay standing because I need to stay standing for this next part. Thorn is staring at me. The calculation is gone from his pale gray eyes. What's there instead is the expression of someone who has found a thing they put down 18 years ago and stopped looking for. The old stories were true, he says, and his voice is not quite steady. I stopped believing they were. My grandmother believed they were, I say. She spent 18 years making sure they'd still be true when someone was ready to need them. Thorn looks at me for a long moment. Then he goes to one knee. It is not a dramatic gesture. It is a simple one, the simplicity of something done because it is right rather than because it is watched, and because it is simple it is the most affecting thing I have seen in weeks, and I feel it in my chest like a struck bell. One by one, beginning with the wolves nearest to Thorn and moving outward in a slow wave, the gathered exiles kneel. Not all at once. Not with the synchronized submission of Cain's pack responding to his command. One by one, each wolf making their own decision at their own moment, which is the point, which is the whole point, each act of kneeling here a sovereign choice rather than a conditioned reflex. By the time the wave reaches the back of the clearing, 240 wolves are on their knees in the thorn waste, and the silence is enormous and full. "We will follow you," Thorn says, and he doesn't raise his voice because he doesn't need to, because the acoustics of the clearing and the quality of the silence carry it everywhere. "We will fight beside you, and we will die beside you if that is what it takes. We ask only one thing in return. Tell me," I say. "Break his chains," Thorn says simply. "All of them. Finish what your grandmother started." My throat is tight. I let it be tight. I don't manage it away. I can't promise we all come through this hole, I say, because they deserve honesty, because I am done with the kind of leadership that prettifies reality in order to secure compliance. I can't promise it will be clean or fast or that we don't lose people we love. Cain is strong and he has been building his empire for 18 years and he will not give it up without fighting for it with everything he has. I look out over the kneeling wolves. All of those faces. All of those years. But I promise this, I will not command from safety while you face danger. I will not ask anything of you that I am not willing to do first. And I will not stop until every collar in every one of his territories is ash. I pause. I am one of you. I was enslaved in Ashvale for 10 years. I know what it is to wake up every morning and choose, again, to survive. I know what hope costs when every system around you is designed to make hope seem delusional. I feel the fire stir in my hands, gentle, warm, present. And I know that the fact that we are all still here, still breathing, still choosing, that means something. That means we are the kind of wolves who do not stop, who cannot be made to stop, and neither can this. I let the fire bloom one more time, briefly, a corona of silver gold light around my hands, warm and steady and entirely controlled. So let's end it, I say. The clearing erupts. Not the careful muted sounds of a crowd trying not to attract attention. Not the performed enthusiasm of wolves responding to an alpha's command. The real thing, the specific sound of people who have been holding something back for a very long time releasing it all at once, howls and shouts and the particular bright sound of grief transforming into something that can be aimed forward. Ember is beside me in the moment the sound peaks, close and steady and warm, and I feel his hand find the small of my back, light and brief and certain, and I lean into it for exactly 1 second before I straighten and face what's ahead. Well, says Lyra, appearing at my other side with her usual absence of preamble. That's an army. That's an army, Ember agrees, and when I look at him his expression is the unguarded one, the copper eyes warm and full of something he has been getting closer to saying out loud for days. Don't, I say. Don't what? Say whatever you're about to say in the middle of all this. I'm almost smiling. Save it. For when? For after. I meet his eyes. When it's over. Say it then. He looks at me for a long moment. All right, he says. After. And the promise of it, small and specific and entirely real, is the thing I carry forward into the planning and the preparation and everything that comes next. After means we believe there will be an after. That is, it turns out, the most powerful thing either of us has said. Chapter 8. The War Council meets in the cave system beneath the standing stones. I didn't know it existed until Thorn led us to it after the gathering, a network of chambers carved into the rock below the Thornwaste surface, deeper than the corruption reaches, the air here cleaner and older than anything above ground. Torches burn in iron brackets along the walls. Maps cover every flat surface, rendered in careful detail by wolves who have spent years watching Cain's territories from the outside, memorizing what they could see and inferring what they couldn't. There are 7 of us around the central table. Me, Ember, Lyra, Thorn, and 3 others I'm still learning. Kira, who has a scar across her left eye that has taken the sight in it and who moves through the world with the particular adaptive precision of someone who has compensated for loss so completely that the compensation has become its own strength. Davin, a broad, quiet wolf who says almost nothing and whose silence has weight to it. The silence of someone who processes everything and releases nothing until they are certain. And Petra, youngest of the group, barely older than me, who carries maps in her head the way other people carry language, who can describe the layout of any territory she's visited with the accuracy of a blueprint drawn from memory. The fundamental problem, Lyra says, opening the discussion with her characteristic directness, is numbers. Cain has 320 warriors in Ashvale alone. We have 240 fighters, many of whom have been in the Thornwaste for years and haven't seen sustained combat. Quality versus quantity, Kira says. Her remaining eye moves to me. Your power is the equalizer, potentially, but it's an unpredictable variable. Less unpredictable than it was 2 weeks ago, I say. How much less? I can hold controlled fire for sustained periods. I can direct it specifically. I'm accurate at close to mid-range. I pause. The broader working, the liberation-level power, I'm still building toward. Timeline. Another week of preparation, Ember says, before I can answer, and there's something in the way he says it that closes the question, that says this is not negotiable and I am the one who knows her capability and I am telling you 1 week. He doesn't look at me when he says it, which means he's not asking for my confirmation, which means he's protecting something. 1 week minimum. Kira studies him for a moment and decides to accept it. 1 week, she says. What else? Davin speaks for the first time, his voice low and measured as a careful pour of water. The slaves inside Ashvale are a variable too. Potentially significant. 300 wolves in the slave quarters, approximately, based on the most recent intelligence from our contacts inside the territory. If they fight, Cain's numbers advantage collapses. If they don't, they'll fight, I say. Everyone looks at me. I know how slaves think, I say. I know how Cain's system has worked on them, what it's done to the way they see possibility. And I know that all of that can change in a single moment when someone shows them that resistance is survivable. I look around the table. They need to see it first. One person doing the thing that is supposed to be impossible. Then they'll move. You're saying you need to be visible, Petra says slowly. Visibly fighting. Visibly holding your own. Inside the territory, before the main assault. I'm saying the slaves need to know what's happening and why before they are asked to choose. I meet her eyes. You don't ask people who've been broken by a system to trust that system is ending based on sounds of fighting outside their quarters. You show them. You give them the moment. A silence while the council processes this. That puts you in the center of Ashvale, Lyra says. Exposed. Before the main force arrives. Yes, Selene. I know, I say. I know what it means. I'm telling you it's necessary. Lyra looks at Ember. Ember is looking at the map. The quality of his stillness has that particular density that I have learned means he is working through something he doesn't like the shape of but cannot find a structural argument against. His jaw is tight. His hands are flat on the table. There's another option, he says finally, that achieves the same result with better positioning. He traces a line on the map with one finger, Ashvale's eastern perimeter, the side that faces away from the main road, where the slave quarters back up against the territory fence. If we breach here, quietly, small team, an hour before the main force moves on the western gate, he pauses. The slaves see a breach. They see a face they know. He looks at me briefly. They hear what's coming. They have the hour to choose and to prepare. When the assault begins, they are ready. A face they know, Kira says. You mean Selene goes in with the breach team? I mean Selene goes in with me, Ember says. Small, fast, quiet. We make contact with the slaves. We give them the information. We get back out before Cain's perimeter patrol comes around. And if the patrol comes early, then we deal with it. With 2 people. With 2 people and celestial fire, he says, and there's a flatness to it that ends the argument. That says I have assessed this and I know what she can do and I am not gambling with her. I am making a calculation. The council debates for another hour. Routes and timing and contingencies. The language of people who have learned through hard experience that plans require redundancy because things go wrong and the wrong things are rarely the things you planned for. I listen and contribute and watch Ember across the table as he works. The way his mind moves through tactical problems. The way he handles Kira's sharp skepticism and Davin's quiet observations and Lyra's blunt assessments with equal attention. The way he keeps returning to the map with that copper-eyed focus that sees things in spatial arrangements that I am still learning to see. He is extraordinary at this. Extraordinary in a way that his years alone in the Thornwaste have built, that his father's violence built, that his exile built, all of those terrible things making him exactly the mind this moment requires. I wonder if he knows that. I suspect he doesn't, quite. When the meeting finally breaks, the plan has a shape. Breach team at the eastern perimeter 1 hour before dawn on the 7th day from now. Main force through the western gate at first light. The challenge issued formally the moment Cain appears. Single combat for Ashvale's leadership, celestial bloodline law, ancient and binding. The others file out. Lyra goes last, pausing in the doorway to look at me with an expression that contains, briefly, more warmth than her usual register. Good meeting, she says. You held the room. The room held itself, I say. I just didn't drop it. Something that might be a smile crosses her face. Then she's gone, and it's just Ember and me in the cave, and the maps on the table between us, and the torches burning low. He is still looking at the map. The breach team, I say. You said 2 people. Yes. You're certain that's enough? No, he says. I'm certain it's the right number. Those aren't the same thing. I come around the table to stand beside him, looking at the map from his angle. The eastern perimeter of Ashvale, the slave quarters marked in grey, the patrol routes in dotted lines. You're not happy about this, I say. I'm not happy about any of it. He traces the patrol route with one finger, not touching the map, just following it in the air above. I've spent 7 years building toward this moment, and now that it's here I find I'm considerably more interested in the person standing next to me surviving it than I anticipated. That's inconvenient. Remarkably, he agrees, dry. I look at his profile. The scars. The clean line of his jaw underneath them. The copper eyes moving over the map with that focused intelligence that I have come, somehow, to think of as one of the most attractive things I have ever encountered in a person, which surprises me every time I notice it. Ember. He turns. I need to say something and I need you to not respond with tactics, I say. A pause. Something shifts in his expression. The careful manager of his own feelings taking a step back, making room. All right, he says. These weeks, I say. Training here, fighting beside you, learning what I'm made of because you kept insisting I was made of something. I don't have words for what that's meant. I didn't know what it was like to have someone believe in me. Not since my grandmother. I pause. I know what you said at the fire about finding me remarkable. I know what you said about we're. I know what the after means that you promised. He is very still. I'm not good at this, I say. I have exactly no practice at this specific thing. Surviving, I'm excellent at. Feeling safe with someone. Telling someone they matter to me without it being a liability. Selene, he says quietly. I'm getting there, I say. Give me a moment. He waits. You matter to me, I say. Not because you saved me. Not because you're the only person I know in this forest. Because you are someone I would have chosen, in any circumstances, in any life. The scars and the war and the exile and all of it. But also, just you, the specific way you are, the way you handle things, the way you look at problems and the way you look at me, the way you held my grandmother's trust for 18 years and kept it like it mattered. He moves. Not dramatically. Not with the decisive urgency of someone who has been waiting and can't wait anymore. He steps toward me the way he does most things. With intention, with full attention, with the quality of someone who has made a decision and is now carrying it out completely. His hands find my face, both of them, the way they did after the shadow taken. Cradling, careful, the scars on his palms warm against my skin. And he tilts my face up and looks at me for a long moment. Long enough that I can see the amber copper of his eyes and everything in them, and there is nothing guarded in his expression anymore, nothing managed or contained, just Ember, specific and whole and entirely present. You matter to me, he says back, and the way he says it, with that exact, precise quality of someone returning something they have been trusted with, makes the words feel like a transaction of enormous value. More than I have words for. More than I've been saying, because I've been afraid that saying it was asking you to carry the weight of my feelings on top of everything else you're carrying. That's not how weight works, I say. No, he agrees softly. It isn't. Shared weight. Becomes lighter, he finishes. I know. I've known that longer than I've been acting like I know it. Ember. Selene. Stop talking, I say. And he does. He kisses me the way he does everything, with full attention, with decision, with none of the hesitation of someone who is uncertain and all of the gentleness of someone who knows they are handling something worth being careful with. His hands stay at my face, thumbs moving lightly against my cheekbones, and I reach up and take hold of his wrists, not to stop him, just to hold him there, to be certain this is real and present and happening. It lasts and it is enough and it is also not enough at all, which is how I know it is real. When we break apart, his forehead comes down to rest against mine, and we breathe together in the torchlit cave beneath the standing stones, and outside above us the thorn waste holds its corrupted silence, and in 7 days everything changes. After, he murmurs. After, I say. I'm going to say everything then, he says. Everything I've been not saying since the first morning in this forest. I know. There's a considerable amount. I know that too. I feel him smile against my forehead. 7 days, he says. 7 days, I confirm. He pulls back just enough to look at me, his hands sliding from my face to my shoulders, and his expression is the open one, the unguarded one, the one that has no warrior's mask over it, just him. We're going to win this, he says. Not the certainty of someone who doesn't understand the risk. The certainty of someone who has assessed the risk completely and decided, on the other side of that assessment, that this is the thing they are willing to bet everything on. Yes, I say. We are. And then. We stay there for a moment, the map spread around us, the 7 days between us and everything we've promised. And it is frightening, and it is real, and it is the most alive I have felt since my grandmother looked at me across the judgment ring and shaped a truth with her lips that took me 10 years to understand. Come on, Ember says finally, stepping back but keeping one hand, taking mine and holding it in that careful way he has, like it matters that he doesn't let go. We should rest. The next 7 days will require everything we have. And after the 7 days, he squeezes my hand once. After the 7 days, he says, we get to find out what we're like when we're not defined by what we're fighting. I'm looking forward to that, I say. So am I, he says. More than you know. We leave the cave together, hand in hand. And above us the thorn waste is dark and the moon is climbing, and somewhere beyond the corrupted trees Ashvale waits with all its chains and cruelties, and the people inside it who have been waiting, in their different ways, for the same thing we have been building toward. 7 days. I hold the count of it like a lantern held in both hands, small and warm and entirely necessary, lighting only as far as the next step and no further, which turns out to be exactly as far as you need to see. 1 step, then the next, then the one after that. 7 days to the fire. Chapter 9. The 7 days are the most complete of my life. I understand this is a strange thing to think about, 7 days that contain more physical pain, more exhaustion, and more genuine terror than most stretches of time I have lived through. And I have lived through stretches of considerable pain and exhaustion and terror. But completeness isn't the same as comfort. Completeness is about every part of you being present and in use, nothing suppressed or filed away or made small for safety. And for the first time in my memory, every part of me is present and in use simultaneously. I train with Ember in the mornings. Combat work harder and more specific than anything from the earlier weeks. Cain's fighting style, his tendencies, the way dominant alphas trained in his system approach a formal challenge, which is with overwhelming force in the first 30 seconds because they expect submission to come quickly and have never had to plan past it. Ember has been watching Cain for years. He knows the patterns the way you know the patterns of weather that has shaped your landscape. He'll come at you immediately, Ember says, circling me in the clearing. He won't wait. He hasn't had to wait for anything in 18 years, and he'll approach this the same way. The first strike will be massive, meant to end it. And move. Don't block. Don't meet force with force. You're faster than he is, and he doesn't know that yet. Let him exhaust the first attack, and then he demonstrates, and I demonstrate back, and he corrects my angle and my footwork and the position of my weight. And we do it again and again until the movement is below thought, in the body's memory rather than the mind's, which is where it needs to be because thought will be too slow in the actual moment. The afternoons are power work. Moon calling preparation, which Ember and I have developed a careful graduated protocol for, building the capacity of the channel incrementally, working with the celestial fire at the edge of my comfortable range and then fractionally past it, letting my body learn what it feels like to conduct more power than it currently wants to conduct, and then resting and recovering before the next session. It is the most demanding thing I have learned to do. Not because it hurts, though it does, consistently, a deep bone-level ache that lingers for hours after each session, but because it requires me to hold 2 contradictory things simultaneously, the full weight of purpose, every face, every chain, every morning I woke up in Ashvale and chose to survive another day, and the absolute stillness of a channel that is not adding its own turbulence to what is passing through it. To feel everything and be still. To care completely and control completely, both at once. My grandmother's journal has a passage about this. I read it every evening, until the words are not something I read but something I know. The celestial fire does not ask you to be unmoved. It asks you to be moved and steady at the same time. The tree that survives the storm is not the one that feels nothing. It is the one whose roots go deep enough that feeling everything does not uproot it. On the 5th day, in the afternoon power session, something shifts. I am standing in the stone circle, the pendant warm in my closed right hand, the moon not yet risen, the pale thorn-waste sky doing its minimal best at afternoon light, and I reach for the fire from the deep place and it comes. And then I push past the fire, looking for what lies behind it, the original source that my grandmother wrote about, and I feel it. Enormous. The word is laughably inadequate. It is like calling the ocean large or the sky distant. The power that lives in the moon calling is so far beyond the scale of anything I have worked with that my first instinct is to close the channel immediately, to pull back to the familiar, to not. I don't close it. I hold the edge of it. Not pulling it through, not attempting the full working, just staying in contact with its scale, letting my nervous system learn that this exists and does not immediately destroy me, that it is possible to be adjacent to something this large without being unmade by it. 10 seconds. 20. I close it deliberately, cleanly, and open my eyes. Ember is watching me from across the circle with an expression that is equal parts pride and something more frightened than pride, and for once he doesn't say anything, which is how I know the something more frightened is significant. I found it, I say. I know, he says. I could feel it from here. It's. Yes, he says. It is. I can do it. I know you can. He crosses to me, his hands going to my shoulders, checking me over with the quiet efficiency of someone looking for structural damage. Are you all right? Yes. Tired. I didn't let it through. Just touched it. Good. He exhales. That was exactly right. Exactly what we planned. You looked frightened. I was. He doesn't deflect from it, which is something I have come to depend on in him. His refusal to manage his own feelings into something less inconvenient. I was frightened, and I am also certain you can do this. Both of those things are true. I know. He holds my shoulders for a moment longer than the assessment requires, and I let him, because the warmth of his hands is something I have stopped pretending I don't need. On the 6th day, Thorn brings us to a place I didn't know existed. A grove, deep in the Thornwast's heart, where somehow, impossibly, against every visible logic of the corrupted territory that surrounds it, the corruption hasn't reached. Green grass grows here. Real, alive, specific green, the color of growing things that receive adequate light and water and have not been told they aren't allowed. A pool of clear water at the center of the grove reflects the sky, and at the pool's edge a ring of standing stones smaller than the ones above the caves, carved with celestial markers so old that the stone has grown over the edges of them, reclaiming the carvings slowly. How? I say, looking around. Your grandmother, Thorn says simply. Before Cain's campaign, before she fled, she treated this place. Purified it. He looks at the green grass with an expression of sustained wonder, as though he has seen it many times and the wonder has not diminished. She said the celestial fire, fully worked, leaves a mark. A permanent change in the territory. What she did here 18 years ago is still holding. I stand in the grass my grandmother grew and feel her everywhere, in the specific quality of the light and in the warmth that comes up through the soles of my feet from the ground, and in the way my wolf, who has been increasingly alert and present as we've approached, becomes something else here. Not just present. Joyful, in the specific animal way that doesn't have words, that is expressed entirely in the body's willingness to be open. She trained here, I say, and her mother before her. Thorn pauses. This is where the Ashborn Alphas came when they needed to remember what they were for. He looks at me. I thought you should have this night. Before tomorrow. He leaves us there, Ember and me, in the grove that my grandmother made and kept alive through the worst of everything. We sit at the edge of the pool as the light fades, and I look at my reflection in the water and barely recognize her still, which is not distressing anymore. The not recognizing feels accurate. I am not who I was. I am someone new who carries who I was inside her, which is the most anyone can be. I've been thinking about what comes after, I say. Good things to think about. Mostly. I pause. What do you want it to look like? After. The actual shape of it. Ember is quiet, which with him is never absence, its presence turned inward. I want, he says carefully, to not always be braced for the next thing. To wake up in the morning and have the first thought not be tactical. He pauses. I want to find out what I'm like when the war is over. I've been a weapon for so long I've forgotten if there's anything else in there. There is, I say. You can't know that. I've seen it. I meet his eyes across the pool's reflection. When you read my grandmother's journal. When you hold the pendant. When you laugh, which is rare but, a pause. When you look at me in the evenings. When you think I'm not looking back. He is quiet for a long moment. What do you see? He asks. When I look at you like that. Someone who forgot they were allowed to want things, I say, and is slowly remembering. His breath releases in a long slow exhale. Yes, he says. That's, yes. He reaches into his jacket and brings out something held in his closed hand, and when he opens it the grove's soft green light catches the silver and I recognize it before he speaks. The pendant's twin, another piece from the Ashbourne collection, a full moon rather than a crescent, set in the same ring of flame shapes. Your grandmother kept two, he says. She gave me both. The crescent for you. He pauses. And this one, she said, for the wolf who comes with you. who stands beside rather than behind. He holds it out. She knew, I say. She planned for you too. She planned for someone, he says softly. She had faith that there would be someone. He pauses. I'd like to think she'd find me acceptable. She'd find you, I say, taking the pendant from him and turning it in my hands before reaching up and fastening it around his neck, my fingers careful at the clasp, exactly what she was hoping for. His hands find mine when I bring them down, holding them still. Selene. Yes. I need to say the things I said I'd save for after. His voice is low and direct. The voice he uses when he has decided something and will not be deterred from it. I know I said after, but I find I can't. Say them, I say. He looks at me. I love you, he says. Not the version of it that's gratitude or admiration or the displacement of purpose onto a person. The real kind. The kind that knows you specifically and wants you specifically and is not transferable to any other person or cause or moment. He pauses. I've known it for weeks. I've been not saying it because the timing was wrong or you had enough to carry or I was afraid of what it would mean to say it before we knew we'd survive to the other side of it. And now tomorrow is coming whether I've said it or not, he says, and I find I am unwilling to walk into tomorrow with this unsaid. The grove is very still. My wolf is very still. Everything is very still. I love you, I say back, and the simplicity of it surprises me. How easy it is to say, how right it is in my mouth, how it carries no weight of performance or calculation, just the plain truth of a thing that has been true for long enough to be certain. I have been loving you since you held my burned hands in the shadow-taken clearing and looked at them like they mattered. Maybe before that. He pulls me close. Not urgently. Deliberately, with the full attention he brings to everything, his arms around me in the green living grass of my grandmother's grove, his chin resting at my temple, both of us looking at the pool where the sky is beginning to show its first evening stars. We're going to survive tomorrow, I say, against his chest. Yes, he says. We are. And then everything we just said, he confirms. Every word of it. Held to, completely, for as long as either of us can manage. Which will be, I say, a very long time, he says, if I have anything to say about it. We stay in the grove until the stars fully establish themselves, the green grass soft beneath us, the pool reflecting the sky, the old stones keeping watch. My grandmother's fire still warm in the ground beneath us, 18 years of it, patient and present and exactly where she left it. I read from the journal by starlight, the final passages I haven't read yet, her notes on the formal challenge, the specific celestial protocols, the precise working of the moon calling when deployed in a liberation context, the exact cost of it and how to manage that cost and what comes after the cost. She wrote these pages last. I can tell from the way the handwriting changes. Still precise, still her, but with a quality of urgency underneath the precision. The handwriting of someone writing against a deadline with everything they know. Selene, Ember says. He has been reading over my shoulder. Close. I see it. The cost is more than you described to the council. Yes. How much more? I close the journal and hold it against my chest the way I did the first night. The way that feels like holding my grandmother. It will put me down, I say. Completely. The full working, breaking the forced bonds across all 7 territories simultaneously, will take everything I have and I won't be conscious afterward. For a significant time. Silence. How significant? She doesn't say. I pause. She says the recovery depends on what the wolf brings back to it. What she has to come back for. Ember is very still. Then you have considerable reasons to come back for, he says, and his voice is steady and his hands, when they find mine in the dark, are not quite steady, and both of those things are true at once and I love him for the honesty of both. I know, I say. I have every reason. Then we're agreed, he says. You go in, you do what needs to be done, and then you come back. As a plan, I say, that's the simplest one we've made. The best plans usually are. I lean into his warmth and look at the stars reflected in the pool and think about my grandmother standing here, young, not yet knowing what was coming, tending this green place with her fire and her hope, leaving it for me to find. She left me everything I needed. The pendant, the journal, the grove, the knowledge, and through the careful architecture of her hope, and the long faithful watch of a man who kept his promises in a corrupted forest for 7 years. She left me this, too. This warmth, this hand in mine, this specific person, improbably present, choosing me as deliberately as I am choosing him. I think she would call it the most important thing she left. I think she would be right. Sleep, Ember says softly. Tomorrow comes early. I know. And you need to be. I know. I'm going to be watching, he says. Every second. Every moment. I'm not going to look away. I know that too, I say. It's one of the reasons I'm going to be fine. He presses his lips to my temple, brief and warm. And in the green living grove in the middle of the dead forest, I sleep. And my grandmother's fire keeps us warm through the night. Chapter 10. We approach Ashvale in the last dark before dawn. 4 of us for the breach team, me, Ember, Lyra, and Davin, who moves through dark territory with the specific silence of someone who has spent years being somewhere he wasn't supposed to be and surviving it. Behind us, 240 wolves wait at the Thornwaste's edge, holding position, holding breath, holding everything steady for the signal that means move. The forest between the Thornwaste and Ashvale's eastern perimeter is different from both of its neighbors, not corrupted like the Thornwaste, not the managed tree lines of packed territory, but a borderland, a place that belongs to neither world and has developed its own character accordingly. It grows dense and low, full of the kind of undergrowth that catches at ankles and obscures sight lines, and we move through it in single file, Davin leading, his sense of space and distance so reliable that Ember trusts it completely and doesn't second-guess it once. I carry the pendant at my throat and the fire at a low simmer in my chest, steady and controlled, a banked thing waiting. I carry my grandmother's last pages in memory, word for word. I carry Ember's hand, briefly, at the tree line's edge, where we pause and he turns to look at me in the pre-dawn dark and says nothing, which contains everything. Then we move. The eastern perimeter fence is iron, old and thick, maintained with the kind of institutional thoroughness that says this fence is important and its importance is taken seriously. On the other side of it, the slave quarters run along the inside of the perimeter for 100 yards in each direction. Long, low buildings, dark at this hour, the specific darkness of places where light is a resource that belongs to other people. Davin finds the weak point in the fence that Petra mapped from memory, a section where the ground has settled unevenly, creating a gap between the bottom of the iron and the earth that is too small for a ranked wolf to use and therefore has not been reinforced, because the ranked wolves who maintain this fence have never seriously considered that the threat might come from below their notice. Oversight, in both senses. We go through one at a time, low and fast, and the fence doesn't sound, and no alarm comes, and we are inside Ashvale's perimeter in the dark with an hour before the Western Gate assault begins. The smell hits me immediately. I knew it would. I grew up inside it, breathed it for 10 years, and I understand intellectually that returning to it would be like this. The specific compound of smoke and iron and suppressed fear and the particular flatness of air that has been breathed by too many wolves in too small a space with insufficient food and rest and dignity. I knew it would hit me. Knowing doesn't prepare you. My wolf goes rigid. Not with fear, with recognition, and recognition's more complicated cousin, the feeling of a place that made you pressing its claim on you again, insisting on its version of what you are. Ember's hand finds the small of my back, a single steadying pressure, there and gone. I breathe. The first building is the one I knew as the women's quarter, long, low, 20 women sleeping in the collective breathing dark. I ease the door open and slip inside, Ember behind me covering the entrance. It takes a moment for the nearest sleeping figure to register the intrusion, and then she is awake in the fast, complete way of people who have learned to come to alertness quickly, her eyes wide, her body ready to perform whatever response the situation requires to survive it. I step into the thin line of pre-dawn light coming through the high, narrow window so she can see my face. Silence. Then, barely a breath, Selene. Wren. I know her. She worked beside me in the rendering kitchens for 3 years, taught me how to make the grey broth slightly more nutritious by adding foraged herbs that no one in the ranked quarters would have noticed missing. She is 32 years old and has been in Ashvale since she was 12 and has never known anything else. She stares at me like I am a thing she thought she had invented to survive the dark. I'm real, I say, very quietly. And I need you to wake everyone and listen. The news moves through the slave quarters the way news moves through contained populations. Faster than it should be possible, through networks of trust and whispered communication built up over years of careful maintenance. Within 20 minutes, every building knows. Within 30, the people who are going to make a choice have mostly made it, and the shape of the choice resolves into something I can see in their faces when I move through the darkness from building to building, Ember and Lyra and Davin spreading out to cover the breadth of it. Some faces show the expression I feared most, the blankness of the thoroughly broken, the careful non-commitment of wolves who have learned that choosing anything is dangerous and have stopped being able to imagine a version of choosing that doesn't cost them. I don't push those wolves. I can't ask people to step into something this large from a standing start of that much damage. What I can do is make sure the door is open and leave the choice genuinely theirs. But most faces show something else. Something I recognize because I wore it myself for years, underneath the careful performance of compliance, the specifically particular expression of suppressed fury that has been waiting, without knowing what it was waiting for someone to tell it that the waiting is over. In the third building, I find Roan. He is sitting up on his sleeping platform when I come through the door, and he sees me and goes completely still in the way of someone experiencing something their nervous system cannot immediately categorize. His 7-year-old brother is asleep beside him, one small fist curled under his chin. We look at each other. "You came back," he says. Not a question. Just the processing of an impossible thing becoming real. "I came back," I say. "And I need to know if you're coming with me." His jaw works. "Selene, I know," I say. "I know why you did it. I'm not here about that." I look at him steadily. "I'm here because in about 40 minutes this territory is going to become something different from what it has always been, and you can be part of that or you can survive it from the sidelines, but you need to choose." His eyes go to his brother. The small fist. The sleeping face. "If I fight, your brother will be protected," Ember says from the doorway, quiet. "I give you my word." Roan looks at Ember for a long moment. The assessment of someone trying to determine if a word is worth what is being asked to trust it. Then he looks back at me. "Tell me what you need," he says. The hour passes. It passes in the specific way that hours pass before the thing that divides your life into before and after. Each minute distinct and fully present. Nothing blurring, everything in too clear focus. I move through the slave quarters and speak to people and answer questions and let the fire bloom briefly, gently, when words aren't sufficient. A warm pulse of silver gold that says without saying, "This is what is coming. This is what is real. This is what you have been waiting to believe in." When the first pale edge of true dawn appears at the horizon, I return to the eastern perimeter where Ember is waiting. He looks at me in the growing light. "Ready?" "No," I say. "Let's go." We move to the pack square. It is arranged as it always is for significant pack events. Cain on his elevated platform at the center, his senior warriors flanking him in ranked order. The rest of the pack spread out in the careful spatial hierarchy that his system enforces at every gathering. The slave quarters face it on the eastern side, their occupants visible through the fence. He sees us the moment we emerge from the eastern passage. Something moves across his face, not surprise, exactly. More like the expression of someone who had considered this possibility and assigned it a very low probability and is now rapidly revising. He looks older than I remember, in the way that all sources of fear look smaller when you return to them having grown into something they didn't account for. Still large, still cold, still carrying that absolute certainty of someone who has enforced his version of reality for long enough that he has mistaken it for the actual version. But smaller. "Well," he says, and his voice carries across the square with the practiced authority of someone who has spent decades making sure his voice carries. The exile returns. With her rogue. He surveys us with deliberate leisure, performing unconcern for the assembled pack. "Come to beg for mercy, or simply to make your execution more theatrical." "I've come to challenge you," I say. My voice carries too. The stone circle's acoustics and the standing stone's training and 10 years of learning to be heard only when the stakes made invisibility untenable. All of it comes together in a voice that moves across the square and lands everywhere at once. "Alpha to Alpha," I say. Celestial bloodline law. Single combat for leadership of Ashvale. The silence that follows has texture. Cain looks at me. The cold pale eyes doing their inventory, the calculation visible even from this distance, running through options and angles and the particular tactical landscape of a situation he did not plan for. "You are not an alpha," he says. "You are an omega slave with delusions of relevance." "I am Selene Vayne," I say. "Granddaughter of Myra Ashbourne, last living heir of the Ashbourne celestial line. By law that predates your authority and will survive it, I have the right to challenge for leadership of any pack that operates under celestial territorial precedent." I let the fire show. Controlled, deliberate, a corona of silver gold that rises around my hands and forearms and says without words, "This is not a bluff, this is not desperation, this is exactly what it appears to be." Something moves through the assembled pack. The older wolves, the ones who were present 18 years ago, who remember what the celestial fire looks like when it's carried by someone who knows what it's for. Those wolves take a step back. Not from cowardice, from recognition, from the specific physical response of a body that remembers something its mind has tried to forget. From the slave quarters fence, I feel them watching. Hundreds of eyes. The celestial line is extinct, Cain says. I made certain of it. You missed one, I say. And she grew up in your own house, in your own kitchen, scrubbing your floors and learning exactly how your system works and waiting for the right moment to end it. A murmur through the crowd. Cain's jaw tightens. The calculation in his eyes sharpens, and for a moment I see it, the flash of something beneath the cold authority. Something old and specific and exactly what my grandmother said it was. The night she looked at me over the judgment ring and shaped a truth with her lips. Fear. He has always been afraid of this. Of the line surviving. Of the fire returning. Of someone standing in this square and saying not anymore and meaning it completely. Fine, he says, and the word is precise and deliberate. The word of someone accepting terms they have decided they can defeat. I accept your challenge. He shifts. It is a powerful shift, practiced and fast. The shift of a wolf who has been dominant for so long that the animal form comes easily, automatically, with the fluid confidence of a body that knows its own power. The wolf that stands in the square where Cain was is massive, gray and dark, the coloring of cold things, those pale ice blue eyes unchanged in the shift. He is bigger than me. He has always been bigger than me. That is not, it turns out, the relevant variable. Go, Ember says quietly, behind me. I shift. The change comes cleanly, faster than it has ever come, my wolf meeting me halfway in the way she has been doing since the training began. The two of us genuinely collaborative now in a way we have never been, years of forced separation resolved into a working partnership that has its own specific joy in it even now, even here. I land on 4 paws in the packed square of Ashvale, and I am smaller than Cain, and I am faster than Cain, and I carry in my chest the fire that his entire 18-year campaign was designed to extinguish. He is looking at me with those ice blue eyes. You can't win this, his voice says in my mind, the alpha's tone, the one designed to trigger submission, the one that has worked on every wolf in his pack for 18 years. You're a slave playing at authority. Your bones remember what you are. My bones, I say back, remember exactly what I am. He lunges. Feist, exactly as Ember predicted. Overwhelming force in the first movement. Designed to end it before it begins. Aimed at my throat with the precision of someone who has taken down larger opponents than me with the same movement 100 times. I'm not there. I move left and forward simultaneously, under the trajectory of his strike, the footwork Ember drilled into my body until it lived below thought, and I feel the displaced air of his passing and I am already turning, already bringing my fire up in a concentrated burst aimed at his hindquarters as he overshoots, and the celestial flame hits him and he yelps, not in agony, but in shock, the shock of something touching him that he did not plan for. He wheels. What? Something you forgot to account for, I say. Move. We circle. He is recalibrating, the tactical intelligence working behind those pale eyes, reassessing the situation now that his opening gambit has not produced the expected result. He is not panicking. I give him that. He is cold and controlled and genuinely capable. And in the recalibration I can see why he has held 7 territories for 18 years. But he is also recalibrating from a model of me that is 18 years out of date. He comes again, differently this time, lower, trying to get under my guard, trying to use his mass to take my legs out. I dodge right, throw a burst of fire at his leading shoulder, dodge again when he adjusts mid-lunge, and am 2 steps behind him before he knows I've moved. We do this for a long time. It is not the clean, decisive combat of stories. It is grinding and technical and exhausting, each engagement lasting seconds and costing effort. The square between us filled with the evidence of passes and near misses, the ground scarred with the marks of claws and the brief bright burns of celestial fire. He is stronger than me and it shows in the exchanges where he catches me. Twice his mass connects with mine and twice I go down and come back up, which costs more than the not going down would have. And I can feel my reserves of energy drawing down in a way that has a finite endpoint somewhere ahead. But he is slower than me, more tired than he expected to be. And every time the fire touches him it leaves something behind, not just a burn, but a residue of the celestial working, the restoration component of the fire that Ember helped me understand, finding the places where his authority is built on corruption and making those places briefly, painfully visible to him. He is fighting his own history, and he knows it, and knowing it costs him. From the corner of my eye I see the slave quarters fence. Hundreds of wolves pressed against it, watching. Every face fully present, nothing suppressed, 10 and 20 and 30 years of forced invisibility stripped away in the specific light of watching someone from their world fight back in the square where they have only ever watched people burn. And among them, Roan's brother, awake now, his small face pressed between the fence rails. They are watching. They are choosing. Something blooms in my chest. Not fire. Something that precedes fire. The thing the fire comes from, the specific feeling of love made active, made purposeful, made impossible to contain. Now, my wolf says, clear and certain. Cain comes at me again, lower, faster, having found a new angle in the recalibration. And I do the thing that wolves are not supposed to be able to do in the middle of a fight. I shift. Back to human form, mid-engagement. The change so fast it is less a transformation than a reclassification. And Cain cannot adjust his trajectory in time. And I grab his fur as he passes and use his momentum, and I am on his back with both hands pressed against the place where his neck meets his shoulders, the place where the corruption concentrates, the place that my grandmother's journal describes as the seat of a forced alpha bond. I reach for the moon. Not tentatively, not at the edge of it. Fully, completely, opening the channel as wide as it will go, and the power that comes through it is enormous beyond language, and I hold it. Not by strength. The channel cannot be held by strength. Only by the depth of the root, only by having something below the power that goes deeper than the power. And I shape it, direct it, send it down through my hands into Cain and outward from Cain through every forced bond he has ever made, every collar he has ever placed, every pact tie he has. Corrupted with his authority across 7 territories. 18 years of chains. Millions of moments of suffering. All of it, every thread of it, held in the celestial fire and burned clean. The sound that comes is not a sound from Cain alone. It is the sound of 7 territories simultaneously experiencing the dissolution of forced bonds, a wave of sensation so large it travels outward from Ashvale's packed square in every direction, and every wolf within range feels it, knows what it is, knows what it means, before any explanation arrives. The sound of chains that have no physical form, breaking. Cain screams, not in pain, though it pains him. In the specific anguish of someone watching the architecture of their entire life dismantled at the foundation while they are still standing in it. The fire burns through him and does not destroy him. It purifies him, the same working I've practiced, the restoration function. And what it burns away is not Cain himself but everything he has constructed on top of Cain, every layer of cruelty and corruption and forced authority, leaving underneath something I did not expect to find. Just a wolf. Afraid, and old, and stripped of everything he used to make himself not afraid. Just a wolf who made choices and has now run out of road. The fire fades. I am standing in the packed square of Ashvale, human, on my feet, the pendant warm at my throat, and I am so depleted I can feel the edges of my own consciousness going soft, and I know what that means, and I remember what my grandmother wrote. The recovery depends on what the wolf has to come back for. Submit, I say, to the wolf lying in the dirt of the square. Cain looks up at me. Those pale eyes. All the cold calculation gone. Nothing left to calculate with or toward. Just the residue of a person who has been afraid for a very long time and built a world out of that fear and has now run out of world. He bays his throat. The packed square is absolutely silent. Then, from the slave quarters fence, a sound begins, small, at first, 1 voice and then 2, and then it is not small at all. It is enormous. It is 240 voices plus the voices of every slave who has watched this morning, and the sound travels outward and Selene. Ember's voice. Close. His hands finding me as my legs make their decision, and I don't fall so much as cease to hold myself up, because he is there, and he has me, and there is no need to hold myself up anymore. I've got you, he says. I've got you. Did it work? I say, and my voice is far away. Look, he says. I lift my eyes to the fence. The collars are gone. Every wolf in the slave quarters stands free of the iron that has been at their throats, some of them clutching the place where it was, some of them standing completely still with their hands at their sides and their faces open with the specific, total disorientation of people who have had something removed that they had stopped noticing was there. Free. All of them. It worked, Ember says, against my hair. It worked, Selene. All 7 territories. Our scouts are reporting in. Every force bond broken. Every slave free. My grandmother, I say. Yes, he says softly. She'd know. I reach up and find the full moon pendant at his throat, close my fingers around it. He covers my hand with his. Come back, he says. Whatever comes next, come back to it. I have every reason, I say, which is what I promised. You do, he says. Every one. The darkness comes, the price the moon exacts, patient and complete. The last thing I feel is his arms, steady and warm, holding the weight of me like it is something worth holding. The last thing I hear is the sound of 240 wolves howling in the dawn, and underneath it, or inside it, or woven so completely through it that they are the same thing. The sound of freedom. Chapter 11. I wake to the smell of green things. Not the flat recycled air of the slave quarters. Not the heavy corrupted weight of the thorn waste or the cold stone smell of a cell. Something alive, grass and water and the particular freshness of morning air that has moved through trees before reaching you, that carries the memory of leaves in it. For a long disoriented moment I don't know where I am or what year it is or how old I am. And in that moment I am no one in particular, just a consciousness coming back to itself from a very long way away, checking in with the world again after an extended absence. Then the details arrive. Softness beneath me. Real softness. A window, actual glass, morning light coming through it at a low gentle angle. The smell of something cooking that has herbs in it. The specific texture of high-quality fabric against my skin, not slave cloth, not exile wear, not borrowed clothes, something made for keeping, for comfort, for the body it was made for. And beneath all of it, steady and certain as a heartbeat that isn't mine but that I have learned to recognize as easily as my own. Cedar and rain. I open my eyes. The ceiling above me is high and unfamiliar, old timber beams, the kind of construction that speaks to a building with history in it. Light moves across the beams with the quality of light in mid-morning, unhurried, fully committed to being the time that it is. I am not in the slave quarters. I am not in the thorn waste. I turn my head. Ember is in the chair beside the bed, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands, and he is asleep, which means he has been here long enough to run out of the ability to stay awake, which means, how long has it been? I try to speak. What comes out is closer to a sound than a word. But it is enough. His head comes up instantly, the way his head has always come up, fully alert before he has properly woken, the reflex of years of sleeping in places where waking slowly was dangerous. He sees me and his face does something that I feel in my chest like a struck bell, the same struck bell feeling as Thorn going to one knee in the thorn waste clearing, but more personal, more specifically mine. Relief so complete it looks, briefly, like grief. You're awake, he says. Apparently. I say, and my voice is strange and thin but it is mine. How long? 4 days. 4 days. I process this. The challenge, I say. 1. He is already moving, reaching for water, for the familiar water skin first and then a proper cup, better than a water skin, the cup of someone who has been waiting for the moment when a cup is appropriate. Cain submitted. Every collar in all 7 territories dissolved simultaneously. Our scouts confirmed it within the hour. He helps me sit up, slow and careful, his hands managing the weight of me with the attention of someone who has been thinking about nothing else for 4 days. The forced bonds are gone. Every wolf Cain enslaved is free. The water is clean and real and I drink it too fast and he pulls it back before I can make myself sick, which is a dynamic so familiar now it functions as its own language. The slaves, I say. Ashvales. Safe. Free. Adjusting. He sets the cup on the bedside table. Wren has been coordinating the transition in the slave quarters. She is, it turns out, extraordinarily good at it. Roan has been helping with the younger ones. His brother has not left his side. A pause. Thorn and Lyra have been managing the ranked wolves. Some have accepted the change. Some fled. A handful tried to reinstate Cain's structure and were stopped. His voice is matter-of-fact in the way that covers a great deal of effort and conflict. It is not clean. It is not resolved. But it is begun. Cain, I say. Contained. Awaiting trial, as you specified. Ember looks at me steadily. He has not attempted anything. I believe he is genuinely diminished. What the purification did to him. I know what it did, I say. I felt it. I pause. He was afraid. Underneath all of it, just afraid. Yes, that doesn't make it all right. No, Ember says. It explains. It doesn't excuse. His expression is careful. The distinction matters, and you've always known it does. I look at him. 4 days. He has been in this chair for some portion of 4 days, and the evidence of it is written on him. The shadows under his eyes, the particular thinness of someone who has remembered to maintain basic function but only barely, the quality of vigilance in his body that has not fully let go yet, waiting for the confirmation that I am actually here and actually returning. You didn't sleep, I say. I slept. In that chair. The chair is adequate. Ember. You were not awake, he says simply. I needed to be somewhere that if you woke, you would see a familiar face immediately. So I could tell you where you were before you had to work it out alone. He pauses. That seemed like the most important thing. I look at him for a long time. This person, this specific, scarred, impossibly careful person who has been sitting in a chair beside my bed for 4 days so that when I opened my eyes I would not be alone. Come here, I say. He moves to sit on the edge of the bed, close, and I reach up and find the full moon pendant at his throat, the ashbourne pendant that his sleeping form has been wearing for days, and it is warm from his skin, and something about the warmth of it undoes me in a way that nothing else has. Hey, he says, very softly. Hey, you all right? I know, I say. I know I am. Then why? Because you've been in that chair for 4 days, I say. And I didn't know that's what waited for me on this side, and I needed to come back for reasons. And you were one of them, and finding out you've been sitting there, doing that. Selene, give me a moment, I say. He gives me the moment, which is what he always does. When I've taken it, when the feeling has moved through me rather than accumulating, I look at him and he looks at me, and the light through the glass window is warm and unhurried, and neither of us says anything for a while because nothing needs to be said and we both know it. Where are we? I ask finally. Ashvale's Alpha quarters. He pauses on the word, deliberately, watching my face process it. Yours. We moved you here from the field on the first day. Lyra and Wren overruled me about the Thorn Waste cabin. A fractional expression. They were right. The Alpha quarters, I say. Your quarters, he says. It's different now. There have been considerable changes in 4 days. Tell me. He tells me. He tells me with the organized specificity of someone who has been managing a transformation for 4 days and has compiled it into a form that can be delivered to its intended recipient without overwhelming her, which is its own form of care. The slave structures being reproposed. The collar forge being dismantled. Wren supervised this personally, Ember tells me, and there is something in the way he says it that speaks to having witnessed something significant. The ranked wolves who remained and accepted the change, beginning the disorienting process of learning to function in a system where rank is earned rather than inherited. The exiles from the Thorn Waste arriving in Ashvale and being integrated, carefully, with the freed slaves and the wolves who were already pack, all of them navigating the enormous, complicated, necessary work of becoming a single thing from the pieces of 3 different things. It's not smooth, he says. There are conflicts. Old wounds. Wolves who've spent years with specific ideas about each other that don't dissolve with the chains. Thorn has been invaluable. He carries enough history to contextualize things for the older wolves, and enough patience to contextualize things for the younger ones. And the other territories? Receiving representatives. He leans forward slightly, the energy in him increasing the way it does when he's discussing something with tactical implications he has been working through. 3 of Cain's 6 other packs have sent envoys already. 2 of those have been straightforward. The pack structures were willing. The Alphas were more afraid of Cain than committed to his ideology. The freed slaves are being integrated. 1 is more complicated. Complicated how? The Alpha there was Cain's brother, Ember says. He believes in the system. He's not going to cooperate voluntarily. Then we don't ask for cooperation voluntarily. No, Ember agrees. We don't. He says it with the equanimity of someone who is prepared for the road ahead to be long. And the equanimity is real, not performed. He has always known this wouldn't end cleanly, and knowing it has let him prepare for it rather than being surprised by it. 1 thing at a time, I say. 1 thing at a time. But first, I say, I move, testing my body's current relationship with the concept of moving, and find it complicated but not impossible. I need to stand up. I need to be in this space as myself and not as someone recovering in it. You should rest. Ember. He stops. I know my body, I say. I know what it needs. Right now it needs to stand up and see the territory and be present in what's been built. I meet his eyes. Help me or get out of the way. The expression this produces, the specific combination of recognizing a tone that is not to be argued with and the particular quality of finding it, in some deep register, completely acceptable, is one of my favorites of all his expressions. He helps me stand. It takes longer than I'd like and costs more than I'd prefer, and he manages the supporting of me with the discretion of someone doing it in a way that doesn't feel like being managed, which is a skill I have noticed before and continue to be grateful for. I stand at the window. Below, Ashvale's Pack Square, the same Pack Square that I last saw from ground level in the dark before dawn, where I have watched people burn and where I have run for my life and where my mother grew up and where I grew up and where everything I built my survival around was built on the back of someone else's cruelty. It is the same square, and it is completely different. The iron post at its center is gone. Not simply removed, dismantled. I can see where the base was, the disturbed ground around it, the deliberate thoroughness of its removal. In its place, something that is not yet finished but is clearly being built, a structure low and open, the kind of structure that is a gathering point rather than a monument to authority, that says come together here rather than observe what happens here to those who disobey. Around the square, wolves. Dozens of them, in motion, working, talking, the specific productive density of people engaged in the project of making something rather than maintaining something. I see freed slaves and thorn-waste exiles and pack wolves I recognize as ranked, all in the same space, all oriented toward the same purposes. I see Wren, directing a group of wolves pulling down the walls of the smaller slave structures, her gestures precise and her expression carrying something I have never seen on her face in 10 years of knowing her. Unguarded authority. The authority of someone who has discovered they are good at something and been given permission to use it. I see Thorn moving slowly through the square, stopping to talk to this group and that one, the unhurried patient motion of someone who understands that the work of building is not the same as the work of fighting, and is well suited to both. I see Roan, near the eastern fence, his brother attached to his side with the specific determination of a 7-year-old who has decided that proximity is love and is being thorough about the expression of it. Roan is talking to a group of younger wolves, and there is something in his posture that I recognize, the posture of someone who has made a decision about who they are going to be, and is in the early stages of learning to inhabit it. He looks up, as if he feels me watching. We are 2 floors apart and on opposite sides of a window. He finds me anyway. He raises his hand. I raise mine back. Come, Ember says softly, from beside me. There are people who want to see you. Is that a polite way of saying people have been waiting for 4 days and Lyra has been managing them with decreasing patience? With remarkable precision, he says. The first hour of being present in my new territory is the most overwhelming thing I have experienced that does not involve celestial fire or combat, which I say as someone who has experienced quite a lot of both. Wolves come to me in a steady, Lyra-managed stream. Freed slaves and exiles and pack wolves and the envoys from other territories. Each conversation different. Each one requiring something specific and real from me rather than a performed version of authority. I learn, in this hour, that being a leader is less like holding something up and more like being the point around which things orient. The work is not mine to do, but the direction is mine to hold. And holding direction while the work is done by the people around me is its own demanding skill, one I am at the beginning of rather than anywhere near proficient at. Lyra stays close, managing the stream with her characteristic efficiency, and several times I catch her looking at me with an expression that is, for Lyra, the equivalent of someone else's warm embrace. Thorn tells me about the trial structure he and Kira are building for Cain, careful, thorough, designed to give testimony to every wolf who was harmed, which will take months rather than days, which is correct. Wren tells me about the rebuilding plans for the slave structures, her voice carrying that new authority, her eyes holding mine with the directness of someone who has decided that looking away is no longer available as a strategy. Roan tells me nothing, in the 10 seconds he has before Lyra moves him along, and the 10 seconds contain everything, his brother's small hand in his face doing the complicated honest work of a person who has to live alongside the fact of what he did and the fact of who he is trying to be, and finding, maybe, that both of those things can be true at once. I let him know, in 10 seconds, that I know both of those things too. In the afternoon, I ask Ember to take me somewhere. He knows where I mean before I say it, which is a quality of knowing I am still getting used to and which I have decided I find more remarkable, not less, with each new instance of it. We walk through the new Ashvale together, through the square and out the eastern gate and into the territory's edge, where the tree line begins, and I breathe the outside air and feel my wolf settle further into herself, the specific satisfaction of a body in appropriate space. At the territory's edge, I stop. I want to see the thorn waste, I say. Just see it. From here. We stand at Ashvale's border and look east toward the corrupted tree line in the middle distance, dark against the afternoon sky, enormous and still. It'll recover, Ember says. With the forced bonds broken, with the corrupt alpha power removed from the territory, the thorn waste is corrupted land, but land can be reclaimed. Your grandmother proved that in the grove. It'll take time. Yes. Years, probably. Yes. I look at the dead trees. I want to do it, I say. When I'm strong enough. Begin the reclamation. Start in the grove and work outward. I pause. Make it somewhere wolves can live again instead of somewhere they survive. Ember is quiet for a moment. That's, he says, a very large project. Yes. It will take. I know. I look at him. We have time. We have the rest of. I stop. Something rises in my chest, something I don't have a complete word for, the specific feeling of a future that is yours, that is real, that extends ahead of you into a space you have been forbidden from imagining for so long that the imagining itself feels like a radical act. The rest of what? Ember asks softly. Everything, I say. The rest of everything. He takes my hand. We stand at Ashvale's border with the dead trees in the middle distance and the living territory behind us and the pendant warm at both our throats and the afternoon light doing its honest work of being afternoon light in a world that has changed and is changing and will keep changing. Say it, he says. What? What you were going to say. He looks at me with those copper eyes that I have been learning for weeks and expect to be learning for a very long time. The rest of our lives, I say. That's what I have. That's what we have. The rest of our actual lives, where the first thing every morning isn't survival calculations and the last thing every night isn't fear. Yes, he says. That's exactly what we have. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. That's either reassuring or terrifying. It's both, he says. It's exactly both. And we're going to find out together, which is the only way I'd want to find out anything anymore. I lean into him, and his arm comes around me, and we stand there in the afternoon light. This man and this version of me that I have been becoming, and the territory hums with the particular aliveness of a place that is in the process of remembering what it was always supposed to be. My grandmother's fire in the grove, keeping its patient light. My mother's choice to survive so that I could exist. 10 years of chains that made me exactly what I needed to be to break them. All of it leading here, to this border, this light, this arm around me, this future that extends forward into territory I have never mapped and cannot predict and am, for the first time in my life, not afraid of. I am Selene Vayne. I was enslaved. I am free. And I am only at the beginning of understanding what that means. 6 months later, the coalition table seats 14. It is not the largest table available in what used to be Ashvale's Alpha Hall and what is now something different, something we are still finding words for, the governing hall of a coalition of 7 formerly separate, formerly brutalized wolf territories united by the single decision that cruelty is not a system worth maintaining. The table is long and plain and undecorated, because Thorne pointed out early in the process that the Alpha halls of Cain's empire were decorated in direct proportion to how much that Alpha needed to perform his authority, and we decided we would not decorate our table, and we haven't. Around it today, me, Ember, Lyra, Thorne, Kira, Davin, Petra, Ren, who has become, in 6 months, one of the most effective territorial coordinators I have encountered and who accepts recognition of this fact with a precision that says she knew it was true for a long time before anyone else said so, and representatives from each of the 6 other territories, including the last holdout pack, whose Alpha is here under duress but is here, which is the first step. We are discussing the reclamation project, not the thorn waste specifically, though that is ongoing. The first push of living green extending outward from my grandmother's grove in a slow, deliberate arc that Ember monitors weekly and reports on with an attention that tells me it means something to him beyond the strategic. We are discussing a broader reclamation, the specific practical work of dismantling systems of forced hierarchy across 7 territories simultaneously while managing the enormous and complicated task of wolves who have known only one way of organizing themselves, learning to organize themselves differently. It is the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than the challenge, harder than the moon calling, harder than any single moment of combat or crisis, because those have ends and this doesn't, because this is the daily work of something large and slow and real rather than the crisis resolution of something acute. I am learning, very gradually, how to do it. We all are. The representative from the last holdout pack, a wolf named Corvin who has been finding his way towards something he hasn't named yet, who sits at the table with the expression of someone waiting to be proven wrong and becoming very slowly uncertain that he will be, speaks for the first time in 40 minutes of discussion. In our territory, he says, carefully, the wolves who were enslaved and the wolves who were not enslaved have a history. The history does not disappear because the bonds did. No, I say. It doesn't. Then how? We don't ask the history to disappear, I say. We create conditions in which wolves can choose what to do with it, who to be in relationship to it. That's the difference between what Cain built and what we're building. He demanded a single story. We're trying to make room for the actual, complicated, various reality of what wolves are and what they've been through. Corvin looks at me. That sounds, he says slowly, like considerably more work than the alternative. It is, I say. It's also the only thing that actually works. The alternative creates another Cain eventually. It always has. He is quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, with the expression of someone revising something. I think, he says, we can work with that. After the meeting, after the representatives have gone and the hall has emptied into its afternoon quiet, Ember finds me at the window, the large east-facing window that looks out over the square where the new gathering structure stands, where wolves move in the late afternoon light doing the ordinary business of a territory that is learning to be something other than afraid. How was that? He asks. Corvin is coming around. I noticed. He stands beside me, close enough that our arms touch. I think your response to his history question was the thing. What specifically? The part where you didn't pretend it was simple. He pauses. People who've survived complicated things can tell when someone's pretending it's simple. It produces the opposite of the intended effect. That sounds like something you know from experience. Most things I know, he says, I know from experience. I lean into him slightly, and he shifts his weight to accommodate it. And this, the ease of it, the automatic calibration of two bodies that have learned each other, is something I am still not used to, in the best way, in the way that I hope I never fully habituate to because the noticing of it is its own form of gratitude. Lyra wants to discuss the Thornwaste reclamation timeline tomorrow. I say. I know. I've been preparing notes. You've been preparing notes. Is that surprising? It's very you, I say. It's very specifically you. He makes a sound that is the sound he makes when something pleases him and he is declining to be obvious about it, which I have learned is his version of a smile that runs deeper than the visible kind. Ren asked me today, I say, whether we're going to formalize anything. A pause. Formalize, he repeats. Her word. I think she means the us of it. Whether there's going to be a ceremony or a declaration or... What did you tell her? That I'd ask you what you wanted. Another pause. Longer. The kind that means he is actually thinking rather than deflecting. I want, he says finally, everything we said in the grove. Every word of it, held to completely, as long as we can. He looks at me. The form it takes is secondary to the fact of it. Whatever form you want, I want. I want something small, I say. Just us and the people who were there through all of it. In the grove, maybe. Where my grandmother's fire is. Yes, he says immediately, with the certainty of someone for whom this is not a decision that requires deliberation. Yes, yes. And then, quieter, she'd like that. I find his hand. We stand at the window and look out at the territory and the light moves across the square in the slow committed way of afternoon light with no way else to be. And below us Ashvale continues its complicated, necessary, daily work of becoming something worth being. The coalition table. Ren's quiet authority. Thorn's patient presence. Roan's brother, who has started attending the new school that Kira organized, who is learning to read using actual books rather than discarded scraps. The Thornwaste grove, green and growing, reaching outward. Corvin, coming around. My grandmother's fire, still warm in the ground where she left it, patient as the moon. And this specific warmth beside me, this hand in mine, this person who kept his promises in a dead forest for 7 years and found me exactly where hope said I'd be. I have been thinking, lately, about what freedom actually is. I thought for a long time that it was the absence of chains. And it is, that, at minimum, that absolutely. The absence of chains is not nothing. It is the beginning of everything else. But it is not the whole of it. The whole of it is this: the ability to choose what you build in the space where the chains were. To decide what the space is for. To wake up each morning and answer, freshly, the question of who you are going to be today, not because you are forced to be anything, not because survival demands a specific performance, but because you have a self that belongs to you, and you get to live in it. That is freedom. And I am, every day, at the beginning of learning how to do it. Which is, I have decided, exactly right. Come on, Ember says softly. There's still light. Walk with me. I look at him. This person. This specific, scarred, careful, extraordinary person who sat in a chair beside my bed for 4 days so I would not wake alone. Who kept my grandmother's trust like it mattered, for 18 years. Who said we like it was already true before he said it. Yes, I say. Always. We leave the hall and walk out into Ashvale's early evening, and the air is clean and the light is warm, and around us the territory hums with its complicated, ongoing, beautiful work, and the moon is already visible at the horizon even before the sun has fully set, patient and present and exactly where it has always been, holding its silver light in trust for whoever needs it. My grandmother is in the green of the grove and in the warm weight of the pendant and in the specific quality of hope that turned out to be real. I remember, grandmother, I say, quietly, only for the evening air and whatever it carries. I remember everything.